Good morning. On behalf of Chairwoman Vargas, we'll call to order the continuation of the board session from yesterday, April 30th, 2024. We'll now move on to discussion item 22, notice public hearing and ordinance to amend Article 20, Section 364.6 of the San Diego County Administrative Code relating to medical examiner fees and charges. We'll hand the floor to the county team for a presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairwoman Vargas and members of the board. We're here today to request your approval of updates to the current fee schedule for the Department of the Medical Examiner. If approved, these would go into effect beginning in fiscal year 24-25. All 6 medical examiner fees were reviewed by the auditor and controller who approved the supporting documentation and methodology for the proposed fee adjustments. Joining me today is Dr. John Lucas, Chief Deputy Medical Examiner for the County of San Diego. Dr. Lucas?
Thank you, Holly. The Department of the Medical Examiner is the county's independent agency that investigates and determines the cause and manner of death in all homicides, suicides, accidents, and certain sudden and unexpected deaths, unexpected natural deaths. The department provides reports to various county customers, including the general public, the media, the justice system, and other public and private entities. And we share data to help identify health trends. The medical examiner has a total of 6 fees, which include services related to document and photograph production, family requested autopsies, microscope use by external consultants, and personal protective gear used by autopsy observers. These fees were last adjusted in 2018. We are proposing increases for 5 of the 6 fees. These increases are primarily due to negotiated salary and benefit increases that have occurred over the years since 2018. We're proposing a decrease in 1 fee, which is the fee charge for the use of personal protective equipment, or PPEs, provided to external autopsy observers. The proposed fee is lower as a result of cost reductions for the paper shoe covers, surgical masks, gloves, and lab coats that we provide. We acknowledge that 6 years is a long time between fee packages. The department was delayed by COVID in 2020 and 2021 and had management changes in 2022 that again delayed the packages. Today's proposed package was initiated last year. Going forward, the department will review fees and propose revisions as necessary on an annual basis. The proposed amendment to fees and charges will ensure full cost recovery in alignment with Board Policy B29. I would like to provide a bit of explanation for the proposed fee related to printing and photocopying documents. That's the second item on the chart, which is $1.90 per page. Although this may seem high, the fee includes not just the time it actually takes to photocopy our documents, it actually includes the time to retrieve our physical file, select the relevant documents, prepare them for copying, such as separating single and double-sided pages and accounting for variably sized documents, photocopying and then reassembling and then physically mailing the documents and then restoring the file. The new proposed fee would result in a typical file costing between $19 and $28.50. I think it's also important to point out that families are provided a first physical copy at no charge. Digital copies requested by families or any requesting party are free. Family-requested autopsies, which are the fourth item on the chart, are autopsies requested by families for their own purposes. In these cases, we either do not have jurisdiction, or if we do have jurisdiction, we do not need the autopsy for our purposes. Families may request that the medical examiner perform the autopsy for our fee, but there are other options they can choose, such as private companies, hospitals, or even other counties. We typically perform approximately 25 to 30 of these autopsies per year. Regarding all our fees, the proposed increases are within the range or below the 3 other California counties we used as benchmarks. For all the fees in their totality, it is anticipated that the proposed changes would result in total revenue increasing from approximately $121,000 to $179,000, a net increase of $58,215 in the first year. If the board advises phasing in the fee increases, we would recommend a 2-year plan, with half the increase implied in year 1. It is anticipated that option B would provide $29,134 in additional revenue in the first year, and of course that would be the same amount less than full cost recovery. Given negotiated salary increases, we would not achieve full cost recovery in year 2 without reassessing our fees, which we would do next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lucas. This recommendation requests the board consider an ordinance amending the section of the San Diego County Administrative Code related to medical examiner fees. If the board takes action as recommended, then on May 21st, 2024, the proposed ordinance will be brought back to the board for consideration and adoption. And this concludes our presentation, and we're available to answer any questions.
Thank you. We'll now call forward the public speakers. We have 5 requests to speak on this item, 3 in person, 2 requesting to speak by phone. Also note that we received 1 e-comment in opposition. Any members of the public that requested to speak on item 22 by phone, please dial into the conference line using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speakers, starting with those in opposition. All speakers are in opposition of this item. As your name is called, please come forward and stand against the east wall. I'd like to invite forward allegedly Audra, Bryant Rumba, and Mark. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board, and I'll ask you to please state your name for the audio record.
My person uses the name Audra. Sad because Mark and Bryant aren't here because you guys stopped the meeting yesterday. So you lose people being able to come in and speak about items. So I just feel like you should be mindful of the public when you're doing that, because it actually takes away their opportunity to speak. And it's not really fair when you say you want to hear from the public. So as far as all these fees go, we continue to just increase fees. And, you know, it's always paid by the customer. And when we have medical examiners who, while, you know, some of them during COVID and after these genocide shots that have been given have been forthcoming in the information that they're finding in the bodies of these humans that are blood clots, things that are like something they've never seen before. And sometimes you'll hear some coming out with it and then other ones don't. And it's really sad because, you know, the public should be concerned about injecting themselves with these bioweapons. And people like this should be telling the public that and making it known. Instead, it's being hidden, like a lot of things. And it's really terrifying to think about, because people believe that they're good, because they want to believe that the government isn't out to harm them. But if you understand what's going on, you know these injections are causing such horrible reactions and death and so much. And now instead of like acknowledging that, we say, well, it was COVID that did this, or, you know, there's all of these, you know, new vaccines to help with what that vaccine's done to people. And people have died because they trusted what they were told. And it's really sad to think that, you know, we can just up fees for a service that it's like, if they can't tell the people the truth, what's the point of them being there?
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mark, first of all of these fees going up is fine for the county because the Federal Reserve Bank is cutting inflation, and the CEOs and, of course, the government just taxes us no matter what, so they're not worried about money. But they're just raising fees. They will steal from us through taxes, government profits, while lowering our standard of living. Now, there are some videos on YouTube, and I usually show some titles, and the ones that got here just in time, I might add, they're particular to this, to understanding this. Rosa Corey, this video title on YouTube, you can start at 3 minutes and 30 seconds. And very importantly, Zeitgeist Addendum, which I'll have to find here. It's, here it is. The Zeitgeist Addendum video will teach a 5th grader in 17 minutes how the Federal Reserve works. So they're raising fees and of course they're claiming that's going to help us, help the community's health. I mean, it's absurd, of course, just on the face of it. And it's all because the government refuses to stop the bankers from causing inflation, which Andrew Jackson's entire campaign was built on when he stopped them from forming a national bank. And President Lincoln was probably killed for when he issued greenbacks. So to have these leaders sit up here right now, looking down, ignoring me, what they should be telling you this. You think they're your representatives. They're not. They're corporate agents, and some of them are better than others. I appreciate your article, Jim, on the immigration. But the bottom line is they're corporate officers, and they're not here to help us, or they'd be telling you.
Thank you. And Chairwoman Vargas, we had 2 requests to speak by phone. I don't see those individuals in the call queue at this time, so that would conclude public comment. On behalf of Chairwoman Vargas, I'll turn it over to Supervisor Montgomery-Stein.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I wanted to know if we have any hardship funding for families who request autopsies. Do we have anything that would help families to do so? I see the option A is a pretty big jump, and so I'm inclined to go with option B, but I want to know if we have any hardship funding for folks who have requested an autopsy.
Thank you for the question, Supervisor. I don't believe that we do have that. In fact, government code does require us, it does specifically say for family requested autopsies that the requester must bear the cost. So we do have options for other fees if there are hardships to waive those fees, but that one in particular seems that it's actually in the government code.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you for that answer. I'm going to go ahead and move option B and see what my colleagues have to say about that. Thank you.
Chairwoman Vargas has indicated she will second the motion. Supervisor Desmond.
I just have a question, and I get it, the fees have to go up and things like that, but, you know, recently I've heard from families that it takes way too long for them to get a determination on deaths. And they're in agony, throughout the whole ordeal, and it drags out and drags out. What are we doing, or what's the medical office doing to get that information to people quicker as to the cause of death? And I realize a lot goes into it, and there's a lot of chemistry or whatever that has to be done. But what can we do to get closure for people that are in agony while this is going to happen?
Thank you, Supervisor Desmond. I appreciate the question. You know, we We have been taking longer than we should, and we recognize that. And but I can tell you that we have been grateful for some of the resources we've received over the last year and into next year, hopefully, that are being put in place. We are currently, and that includes additional staffing, additional equipment in the lab. These are all adjustments to some of the impacts that we've received from the opioid crisis, which really was the thing that put us in the hole, if you will. That being said, we've made a lot of progress over the last year, and we have more to go, but we are continuing on that path in terms of getting reports out, completing things on time, trying to communicate with families along the way. And like I said, we've been very grateful for the resources that we have received through the budget process over the last year or so, and we're looking forward to this next year as well.
And Supervisor Desmond, I would just add that San Diego County is not unique in our timeframes for coming back with cause and manner of death. Unfortunately, the spikes in caseloads, as Dr. Lucas referred to, with overdose deaths, is having an impact around the country, and particularly even here in California, there are some counties that won't even give a time frame for when they will come up with an answer. Just because of the crushing number of people that medical examiners throughout the state are seeing. It's very sad, but our timeframes are in line with, if not better than, the other major counties within California. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, but if we're going to be increasing fees, we also should have efficiencies that come with that. Could we get quarterly report on the amount of time or the average time it takes for people to receive that information and get that quarterly, so we can hopefully see a trend towards the positive on that? I think that would be helpful if we get to see that, to maybe have some improvements on those timelines. But I get it. It's hard. It's tough. It's not easy. Everybody's in the same boat. But if you're asking for more money, the public says, hey, let's do better then. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll note for the record that as Chairwoman Vargas, as part of the motion for option B, because option B does not provide full cost recovery, it would be appropriate for the board to also consider waiving board policy B29 as part of that motion.
Yes, we can make that part of the motion.
Thank you.
I am fine with adding that to the actual motion, being more than direction, the quarterly report. Okay.
And for purposes of the record, the changes listed on the slide with option B will be interlineated into the introduction of the ordinance based on the motion to approve option B.
Thank you, Claudia. With that, we have a motion by Supervisor Montgomery Stepp, a second by Chairwoman Vargas. Please vote. Chairwoman Vargas, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors who are present voting aye. Next item for discussion is item 23, a notice public hearing, Finance and General Government Group fees and rates relating to Assessor, Recorder, County Clerk, Treasurer, Tax Collector, Clerk of the Board of Supervisors, and Office of County Counsel. We'll hand this to the county team for a presentation.
Chairwoman Vargas and members of the board, the item before you today is the Finance and General Government Group 2024 fee package proposal. This year's proposal from the Finance and General Government Group includes 2 new fees and changes to 25 existing fees or rates charged by 4 departments. The proposed changes to existing fees include 19 increases and 6 decreases. There are several reasons for the changes that are proposed today. First, Board Policy B29 directs departments to recover the full cost of services provided to agencies or individuals outside of the county enterprise. Second, it's important that the county is charging the correct cost to its customers. It's only fair to our customers to charge them for the actual cost of doing business and not more. And third, the cost of doing business changes over time. To ensure compliance with the board policy, fees should be reviewed and changes proposed as needed. And lastly, there are times when state or federal regulations may change, which could result in changes to business processes that then would have an effect on the county's fees and rates. Across the county enterprise, the cost recovery analysis is the same. It all starts with time studies to determine how much staff time is used for each of the fees the county charges. These time studies are ongoing and consistently being reviewed to ensure accuracy. In addition, as the county continues to implement new technology and processes to increase operational effectiveness, it's not uncommon to see decreases in staff time spent on each respective task. When we take this time study and apply it to all of our hourly rate calculations, it results in the new fee. Hourly rates are calculated by using the salary and benefit cost as well as any overhead costs, such as services and supplies that support the employee's function, such as technology, facilities, and utilities. When that department gets the full cost package with all the fees and rates they charge, they provide it to the auditor and controller for review. Next, I'll turn the presentation over to Deetra Williams of the Treasurer Tax Collector's Office to review the rates and fees being recommended for the Treasurer Tax Collector's Office.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Board of Supervisors. My name is Deetra Williams. I'm with the Treasurer Tax Collector's Office, and I appreciate the opportunity to present to you today. So TTC proposes updates to various fees that are charged for services performed. The updates are based on salary and benefit increases and current processes. These fees are imposed as a means for cost recovery for specialized services performed by TTC in the effort to collect delinquent taxes and ensure that properties are appropriately positioned to pay statutorily required property taxes. Most taxpayers in San Diego County who pay their property tax bills on time regularly and do not require additional specialized services from TTC will never be required to pay any of these fees. For most of these TTC fees, there is an increase in the total number of hours to perform the task due to increased support and communication with the taxpayers, additional time invested to perform thorough research, and the addition of tasks which were previously omitted. The proposed fees also include updates to direct costs due to pricing increases. You may ask, what has caused an increase in research time? In most cases where the research time is increased, it went from 3 to 6 minutes of research time, including in the previous rate, to 20 to 30 minutes of research. TTC determined that it is not realistically feasible to identify the applicable taxpayer, locate the tax liens in the recorder's office, and obtain property tax records from archives in 3 to 6 minutes. To give these cases their proper due diligence, more time is spent on these activities. Many of the significant increases also come in the form of increased time supporting and communicating with taxpayers. After recent analysis, it was determined that we spend more time advocating for the taxpayers by communicating with other departments, special districts, and the taxpayers themselves to ensure that the taxpayers are well informed about the process, all proper documentation is provided, and that calculations are accurate. TTC has taken on more of a liaison role rather than sending the taxpayers back and forth between other departments and districts. TTC also proposes decreases in several fees, including the delinquent tax installment plan or 5-year plan setup, certificate of lien preparation, release of lien, unsecured final notice, tax sale county auction, and excess proceeds notice fees due to efficiencies established through business process improvement. We also propose a new fee called Enforcement Officer Unsecured Final Notice Fee, which is proposed to recover costs when an enforcement officer is required to issue a final notice or demand for payment. And to note, the last update for TTC fees occurred in 2019. Thank you.
Next up, we have Luis Pedraza with the Assessor Recorder County Clerk's Office.
Good morning, Chair. ARCC, Assessor Recorder County Clerk, proposes non-substantive changes to 3 of its fees related to its image distribution service. This service provides subscribers the opportunity to obtain records via electronically through our internet portal. There are no changes to those fees, just clarifications and non-substantive changes. In addition, ARCC does propose a new fee to accommodate historical and custom requests. This is a new fee, but it does not change any of our fees because it does rely on our self-service e-commerce. Customers do have the option to do that to obtain copies through their e-commerce portal, but the new fee does include the ability for our hourly time and labor rates, including the cost of materials and the selection of third-party costs that are incurred from a vendor. This new proposed fee specifies that the service is not covered, that we can charge those third-party fees through our IT outsourcer when requesting copies for historical bulk copies.
Thank you. And we'll conclude with an update from Yvette Lefevre from the Office of County Counsel.
Good morning, Chairwoman Vargas and members of the board. I'm Yvette, Chief of County Counsel's Admin Services Division. So what I'm going to speak to you about is our increase in the attorney and paralegal hourly rates, respectively. The Office of County Counsel provides legal services to billable clients, including special districts and enterprise funds. As a reminder, we do not provide legal services to the public. The chart on this slide details the proposed changes to the billable rates that are being considered as part of this item. They are the attorney and paralegal rates, respectively. As reflected here, both rates are increasing. These increases are due to the estimated increases in County Council's operational costs, including salaries and benefits and services and supplies costs. Specifically, the County Council's estimated S&B cost increases are tied to negotiated labor increases. Further, it's estimated the salaries and supplies cost increases are tied to anticipated improvements to our technology systems, including the practice management system that we use to manage all existing claims, cases, and advisory matters. It is necessary for County Council to remain current with the business systems and technology used throughout the legal community so that we are equipped to provide adequate and efficient legal services given the high volume, fast-paced workload that we are managing. To note, these rates were last amended by the board in 2023, respectively. Thank you.
And last up for the Finance and General Government Group is Andrew Potter with Clerk of the Board.
Thank you, Ebony. The Clerk of the Board provides a multitude of services to the board, county departments, and the public. There are 2 fees charged by the Clerk's office that are before the board for consideration, and they're detailed on this chart. The first fee is the copies of audio recordings. This fee is charged when a member of the public requests a copy of audio recordings from a Board of Supervisors meeting, a property tax assessment appeal hearing, county hearing officer hearing, or other public meetings. This was last reviewed and approved by the board in 2022. We only receive at most 5 requests per year, as most recordings are transmitted electronically or are available online to download. The next fee is the Written Assessment Appeals Board findings and conclusions. Property owners may request a written summary of the facts and evidence that is used by the Property Tax Assessment Appeals Board in reaching its decision on a property tax assessment appeal. The Revenue and Taxation Code allows for a reasonable fee to be imposed by the county to cover the expense of preparing the findings and conclusions. Rule 308 of the California Board of Equalization Property Tax Rules also states the county may impose a reasonable fee as determined by the Board of Supervisors to cover the expense of preparing the findings and and may require a deposit to be paid prior to the end of the hearing. This fee was last reviewed and approved by the board in 2022. We only receive about 10 requests per year for written findings, and a vast majority of these requests are by commercial property owners for commercial appeals. The primary driver behind the increase is the addition of the Assessment Appeals Board stipends. Previously, their cost for preparing the written findings was not included, as this fee was absorbed by the department. In an effort to ensure full cost recovery, the board member stipends were included in the fee calculations, as well as standard overhead fees. I'll note that while the increase is substantial, the fee is lower than what other similar counties charge, with the average minimum of about $562.
Thank you, Andrew. The recommendations before your board today are to adopt a resolution that approves the changes to the hourly billing rates for attorney and paralegal services, approve the introduction of 4 ordinances that would amend fees related to debt services and the clerk of the board services, and if the board approves the ordinances, submit the ordinances for further consideration and adoption at the May 21st, 2024 Board of Supervisors meeting. This concludes the staff presentation, and we're available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. We'll now hear from members of the public that requested to speak on this item. We have 6 requests, 3 in person and 3 requesting to speak by phone. For those that requested to speak by phone on item 23, please dial into the conference line using the instructions that were provided to you. I also will note that we did not receive any e-comments on this item. We'll begin with the in-person speakers. All speakers are in opposition. As your name is called, please come forward. I'd like to invite Mark, allegedly Audra, and Brian Trumbaugh. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board, and again, please state your name for the record.
A person uses the name Audra. So Mark is here. Didn't realize he was behind me, but I am making a correction to my mistake. It's easy to do. People should do it more. This is quite funny because it's like paying somebody to rob you, right? It's like, we're going to have to rob you, so we need you to pay us for it. And then if you don't, then we'll still rob you more and take your house. It's all a big scam. It's kind of sad because it's like we have to get full cost recovery for screwing you over. Because if the taxes went to what people wanted, right, and then it would probably be good. Or if people could spend the money, like all the money that you guys take, if the people that were giving it to you could dictate where it went, it would probably go to actually really good things and like making things around them better, not just going into the pockets or going like, we're going to ship the money around and then, oh gosh, we can't take care of that, dang it, and you're going to lose your house because there's a storm. It's just sad because it's like everything you guys do, it's like you act like you're providing us a service that's like beneficial to us, and it's not, but you're telling us we have to pay for it and increase pay for it. Even like the paralegal and the attorneys, like, you don't get to use that service, but you're gonna pay for it for us. It's good. It's good. It's just funny because it's such a scam and people, even paying taxes, like income tax, is a voluntary system. And people believe that they have to do it because they get in these contracts with the government, and then they can come after you when you're in that contract. But it's like when we don't get in these contracts, they can't. It's an illusion. But it's sad to think that if you don't pay these increase in fees, they'll come and take your house. And that's the point. It's like, look at Lahaina, look at the storm stuff. All these people have lost everything, and they're not going to be able to rebuild, but somebody will.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mark, Audra's right, and the flood victims are a good example. And of course, if society was functioning correctly, then people could afford to pay for their own lives. And I mean, when I was young, people had medical and they just paid for it themselves. And life was a lot better in general. The present generation has no idea how totally they're being screwed over. There are some things that were good, that our society has gotten better, but in general, it's a scam. It's actually been a scam for a long time, since before 1913, but people need to see this film, this YouTube video, from 6 minutes, 40 seconds to 24 minutes. It's about 17 minutes to teach you why inflation is happening, how it's happening, who's doing it to you. It's the Federal Reserve. And so because of that, people that don't make a lot of money simply can't afford to live. They work their whole lives and they can't retire. And they're trying to retire, and a lot of them wind up homeless. And they can't afford these fees. And then the corporation nation, this is really long, so I'll summarize this YouTube title for you. Your parents, your grandparents have been paying taxes forever. The government's invested it. You see them collaborating every morning, every Tuesday they have this meeting. They're doing proclamations and showing you the companies that they're partnering with. Well, that's fascism. We're the most fascist government ever to be, the most socialist government ever to be practically, except for maybe China, and with all our cameras and 5G and stuff, we're catching up fast. So they own almost everything. And these companies own a lot of the stock in almost everything around you, especially stuff the government invests in. And that's about it for now. I'm out of time, as usual.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the individuals that requested to speak by phone. We'll start with our first caller.
Paul Bold. I am glad that the tax fees, the county council's fee increases are within the bounds of the cost of living, but with the 100% plus fee increases, what planet did the treasurer tax collector from? And the clerk's 189% increase for written assessment appeals board findings and conclusions is absolutely outrageous. Maybe he wants to hide the truth from people who can't afford the 189% raise from 169 to 490 by charging so much. I noticed that the treasurer is raising a lot of fees to account for increased staff costs, about 6%, excessive but not outrageous. But then he increases a lot of fees due to the increased time, like 3 minutes, to provide service. Most of these are services we use already. So, for instance, the 158% increase from 108 to 279 in the subdivision map text clearance certificate fee means about a 152% increase for time required in map reviews and providing the service, which is totally outrageous for an existing service. If these people did not work for the county, they would not get this sort of raise. I noticed the assessor has a new fee for custom image distribution. Sounds kind of like Vegas, the way he charged it variably. But this is San Diego. Anyway, you should reject this motion and not soak the poor or overcharge the people you represent.
Thank you. And Chairwoman Vargas, that concludes public comment on this item. And for the board's reference, Chairwoman has indicated that she will make a motion on this item. On behalf of the Chairwoman, any of her colleagues have any comments? Okay. We have a motion by Chairwoman Vargas, a second by Supervisor Montgomery Stepp. Please vote. Chairwoman Vargas, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors who are present voting aye. Next item for discussion is item 26, adoption of a new population category for San Diegans of Middle Eastern and North African descent. We'll begin with the public speakers on this item. We have 12 requests to speak, 4 in person and 8 requesting to speak by phone. We also received 10 e-comments on this item in opposition. Any members of the public that requested to speak on this item by phone, please dial into the conference line using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speakers, starting with the speaker in favor, followed by the speakers in opposition. I'd like to invite forward Maitili Bala, followed by the speakers in opposition, Mark, Bryant Rumbaugh, allegedly Audra, and then we also received one individual who registered their opposition but did not wish to address the board. You have 2 minutes to address the board. Please state your name for the audio record.
One person uses the name Audra. How you doing, Nora? You feeling okay? Are your nads all right? On your throat? Oh, nodules, I'm sorry. That sucks. Hopefully it gets better soon. But it is kind of nice that you're not so aggressive. This kind of makes you softer, so it's nice. This is interesting because it's like, with the invasion on our border, right, we have all of these ethnicities coming across. I mean, is this equitable to only include just a couple? I guess I don't really know how many we have in this county that we have considered a population. Does there just have to be a certain amount of them for you to do that? Like, I don't understand how that works. But I'm just wondering, there's a lot of people coming across the border, right? They're just flooding in. And I'm wondering, because there's a lot of them are criminals, right? A lot of them are pedophiles. I mean, we had a 5-year-old little girl be raped. So I'm wondering, do they get a population too, since there's so many of them? But like, again, with all of the different nationalities, I mean, are you not welcoming them all? I mean, we are, right, Nora? We have to have the open border. Otherwise, it's xenophobic. So is it xenophobic if we don't acknowledge every single one of them and just consider them all to be the population? Why can't we just do a human race, too? That's kind of, right? I mean, we're all humans. And then the more that we, like, have to separate each other and put each other in groups, we're just creating division. We all bleed the same color, right? I don't know, maybe you guys bleed a different color. Is it black? I don't know. But I mean, is it fair to do that? Like, why do we have to keep separating and being like, you don't check this box, these people will get something over you? There's no equity in that at all.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mark, I don't really have a problem with this, except that there's only one race, the human race, and the way this will be used by the corporation is definitely to divide and conquer, which is what they always do, not just with race, but with religion, economics, absolutely anything at all that they can divide us with. It was very clear in the founding of our country that the main thing the founding fathers were saying is governments eventually get too big and they become evil. So it's always actually the people against the government just having too much power, which it definitely does now. And anything else is an illusion. So all these titles are on YouTube or BitChute or Rumble here, except for there's one article. So I'll go through them real quick. Rosa Corey started 3 minutes and 30 seconds and 17 minutes, that one you'll have to see the whole thing. It's about 26 minutes. And you will understand infinitely more about this corporation and what they're doing. She is an expert California court witness. This is her before the legislature telling people, telling the legislature about Agenda 21 that she personally witnessed working for the Department of Transportation here in California. And she is recognized as an expert court witness. FEMA, see this article. This is not a video. It's an article. You can Google it. No organization should have the powers that FEMA has. It's police state powers, basically. They don't always use them. It depends on the emergency. But the fact that they could is unacceptable in a constitutional republic. Only because people out there are ignoring this and putting up with it could we have such a totalitarian society. Zeitgeist, again, started 6 minutes, 40 seconds. Watch it for 17 minutes. And you and your kids will understand the banking. 1945, we signed the UN treaty. Everything that our government's been doing from on high is UN goals and dictates. It's totally against our sovereignty. Nobody even knows it. That should be stopped. It was illegitimate constitutionally.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the individuals that requested to speak by phone. We'll start with our first caller. The first caller is Mohammed Tuama. Your device might be muted. We'll come back to that caller.
The name of this category is a bit weird, but it makes sense, limited sense. People are people and everyone has different needs. Moreover, I'm shocked that even in San Diego, people of Mideast or North African descent would have to self-identify as Caucasian and white on U.S. Census and other government forms because there's no dedicated ethnicity category for them. And this would be helpful in medical settings, for instance, to zero in on allergies and germs that might affect these people more, or police or similar actions or their ethnicity might help to explain their behavior and offer guidance on how to deal with them. However, if used for equity purposes, this is just one more way to pit neighbor against neighbor, so please do not use the category for equity purposes like you and a lot of governments do.
Divide and conquer.
We are, after all of the human race.
Yep.
Good job, Joel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Boy, good job.
For the record, the speaker was Paul the Bold. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Hey, it's truth. I am awake and alive. This is yet another item where Joel shows his true money colors. It's all about the Benjamins for Phone It In, Joel. Money, 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 money. Nobody here at the county, and especially not Joel, cares whether somebody's out of Middle Eastern or North African descent. When they check Caucasian white, Joel loses out on money and quotas for District 2. It's just that simple. Truth is, I could tell you more about these various cultures more than Joel ever could. While Joel's busy scrolling his phone looking up the closest fast food junk, I'm looking up Iraqi food like samoon, falafels, lamajin, or desserts like leche and malmoul, Syrian food like manakish, and Libyan desserts like basbousa, and kanafa and baklava from everybody. Just Joel doesn't know that. Even the White House doesn't really care about Americans of Middle Eastern or North African descent because they're not even creating the box to check until 2030. And the state's following suit like the puppets that run it are. And that includes Joel as the local level who gets to play his part, pretending he cares that anyone's voices are clearly heard, their needs are addressed, and their contributions are recognized. What a crop. I don't even have a correct box to check on the census. I look and look for the American box, and it doesn't exist. See, this whole system is the exclusive, not inclusive kind. Just like the sustainability impact statement says, quote, the proposal to include a MENA category in federal, state, and local data collection effort, end quote. Data collection. And in exchange for the data to the state, the county gets more money. And then the state hands over the data to the federal government, who gives them more money. It's a racket. That's not even guaranteed representation for that private information. But fun fact about the census, nobody has to fill out anything except the amount of people in the home. The rest is optional Big Brother information.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Mohammed Tuama, item 26. Good morning, Board of Supervisors and staff. My name is Mohammed Tuama with the Middle Eastern Community Center. Thank you very much for bringing up this item. I would like to first start with thanking Supervisor Joel Anderson for having his staff present at our Middle Eastern festival last month and recognizing the Middle Eastern Business Association with their contribution to the community, and that was last April 13th. This item is receiving a lot of support from nonprofits, but some opposition from community members. So if that's to move forward, please, all Board of Supervisors, please have the community voice heard. And we know where your heart is, and we know that you would like to support our community. Again, Mohammed Tuama, Middle Eastern Community Center. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Rahma Abdi. Hi, good morning. My name is Rahma Abdi. I'm a director of organizing and campaign at the Partnership for Advancement of New Americans. We serve refugee and immigrant community from Middle East, Africa, and South Asia. Our community faces disparity in health, safety, housing, education. But without data, MENA community classified as white struggle to show inequality in their daily lives. Government struggle to allocate spending and design a policy to reflect our community needs. We support Supervisor Anderson's proposal to change this reality with the data collection of MENA community. Changes to 2030 census will not come soon enough. We need to act now to make sure our community voice counts. By gathering the local data, San Diego County could ensure the local programs respond to community needs, including interpretation for vital services under Language Access Policy, A139. By backing AB 2763, San Diego County would support statewide data collection to address equity concerns statewide. Counting our community is the first step to make our community voice heard, and we urge the supervisor to support this measure, and thank you so much for your leadership.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Hi, my name is Maitli Bala. I am also calling from the Partnership for the Advancement of New Americans. Thank you so much to the Board of Supervisors. We're in this moment before 2030 where we really have a chance to mobilize our communities, gather data, and try to improve people's lives. At PANA, we have seen firsthand how the inability to count individuals affects our ability to advocate for them in areas such as housing, public safety, and education and health. And so we really thank you for starting this initiative. Our communities want to participate in our democracy and also be served by the programs that our government creates. So thank you so much for this initiative. We strongly urge you to support the measures that Supervisor Anderson has proposed.
Thank you. Chairwoman Vargas, that concludes public comment on this item. And on your behalf, I'll turn it over to Supervisor Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Recognizing our Middle Eastern and North African, or MENA, community in the county data collection ensures that accurate representation in addressing their unique needs. This enables better policymaking, resource allocation, and community support reflecting the diversity and complexity of our county's population. In my district, I represent the largest number of Middle Eastern and North African San Diegans in the county, many of whom have resettled from Iraq, Syria, Sudan, and Afghanistan. While Afghans currently have the option to identify within the Asian category, this initiative would be inclusive if they chose to use MENA as the category to represent them. I'm also proud to say that in my district is home to the second largest Iraqi population in the United States. We have over 38,000 Iraqis located in my district. This initiative not only streamlines the process, but also ensures alignment with federal actions and pending state law. As a county committed to data-driven decision-making, we must seize this opportunity to better serve our diverse communities. You know, one of the challenges when I first got here was that frequently the county would reach out into my district not using languages known to my district. And to have such a large population of refugees, I have the most refugees in my district west of the Mississippi. And so it's really important that these people be counted so that we can meet their unique needs. You know, so often when I was in my previous career, one of the things I was championing for that community was we have medical doctors, we have accountants, we have professional people who have a language barrier. And as a result, they're cleaning floors in hospitals and not waiting on patients. And so whatever we can do to help assimilate and help them the sooner that we get doctors and lawyers and other professionals working at their highest ability in our community, and we need all those professions. So I ask for your support. Thank you.
On behalf of the chairwoman, is that a motion?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. The chairwoman indicated she will second that motion. I'll turn it over to Supervisor Montgomery Stepp.
Thank you so much. I want to say thank you to Supervisor Anderson for bringing this item forward. I think that every culture is best understood by its own history and own story, and that story being told from the primary source. So some of the examples that you just gave reiterate the importance of this item. I do have some process questions. So we are in this board letter, we're being asked to support the state legislation that's moving forward, but the White House Office of Management and Budget has already made this a standard so we can start collecting data, this race and ethnicity data now as a county. Is that accurate?
Supervisor Montgomery Stepp, yes, there are various federal, state, I think we're all transitioning to this, so depending on the guidelines and the parameters for each program, some of it may be delayed, but we will do our best in the areas that we can move forward to start incorporating, and then of course continuing to build on that as we partner with the federal and state agencies to achieve this.
Okay, thank you for that. I think this process that you just described will allow this community to find themselves and amplify their own voices to advocate for crucial socioeconomic resources and data that can only be explained through the nuanced experiences for specific cultures in their communities. I recall doing a lot of census work, getting people ready to fill out the census because in many areas in our region, have been under-resourced, and a lot of it comes from the census count. So this will be really good to not only get folks counted, but to be able to identify the specific need of various communities. So I'm fully supportive of this item. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, one of the biggest challenges we've had is that they have fled many are refugees, and they fled countries where if the government showed up, someone's going to be hanged, someone's going to be stoned. So getting them to voice who they are has been very difficult. But by doing this, we're now using languages that they better understand, and we'll get better results. But I originally wanted to have a town hall with them, and then I learned that no one's going to show up because of fear that I would then punish them in some way because that's what they fled. So it's really interesting working inside these refugee communities. It's so different than what we're accustomed to with the liberty that we share in the United States.
Thank you, Chairwoman Vargas. With a motion by Supervisor Anderson, second by Chairwoman Vargas, please vote. Chairwoman Vargas, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye. We'll now move on to item 27. A resolution to oppose Kaiser Permanente's attempt to reduce mental health therapists' patient management time. We'll call forward the public speakers on this item. We have 19 requests to speak on item 27, 11 in person, and 8 requesting to speak by phone. For those that requested to speak on item 27 by phone, please dial into the conference line using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speakers, starting with those in favor of this item. I'll call you in groups of 5, so I'll ask you to please listen for your name. I'd like to invite forward Michelle Krug, Michael Soto, Flower Alvarez Lopez, Rachel Forgash, and Isaiah Charez. If I've called your name, please come forward. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board, and I'll ask you to please state your name for the audio record.
Good morning. Michelle Krug. I hope that you will pass this letter of this resolution of support. The fact that Kaiser is allowing only 2 hours for therapists to document all of the patients they see in a week in Southern California, but allowing 7 hours in Northern California seems discriminatory at best. I mean, are our patients somehow need less documentation, need less health care? Because obviously this affects the quality of the care that a therapist is able to give in terms of being able to know exactly what went on in each session. So I really appreciate that our County Board of Supervisors is taking this up, and hopefully will be supporting this. And I appreciate that we're looking out for the quality of healthcare, the quality, this affects the quality of life of all of our residents, and therefore I appreciate it, and I hope that you will support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, board. My name is Isaiah Chaidez, and thank you to the board for considering a resolution opposing Kaiser Permanente's cuts to patient management time. If you vote for this resolution, you'll be in good company, standing with over 30 local, state, and federal elected officials and opposing a reduction in planning time for therapists. The Orange County Board of Supervisors passed a similar resolution with bipartisan support. The LA County Board of Supervisors passed it unanimously. Senator Blakespear and Assembly Members Ward and Borner have all voiced support. These elected leaders have stood with NUHW Kaiser therapists because it's clear that they deserve to work in a place where they are not squeezed for every ounce of their productivity and then left in a state of burnout. Therapists should not have to work extraordinarily long hours to meet the needs of their patients. They deserve to have the same respect in the form of equal patient management time as their counterparts in Northern California. When our clinicians are supported, they're set up to keep providing consistent care to Kaiser patients all across this county. The National Union of Healthcare Workers and its members, the San Diego and Imperial Counties Labor Council, OPEIU, AFT, SCIU 221, and Unite Here Local 30 urge a yes vote on this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, Supervisors. My name is Michael Soto. I am the Political Director for the National Union of Healthcare Workers. Thank you for considering this item today. First, I want to start off by saying this is not your typical labor management dispute. This is about improving patient care. As some of my colleagues had previously stated, SoCal clinicians in San Diego and across Southern California and patients are being shortchanged by not receiving sufficient patient management time. And this is just not right. This county and other counties are spending tens of millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars to provide county employees, to provide the various constituents across San Diego with quality health care. And many of those employees and many other constituents choose Kaiser as their insurer of choice, and yet they're not getting the care they deserve. They're receiving only half the patient management time they receive in Northern California. This time is essential for therapists to do work, to do research, to do prep work, to make sure that when their patients come in, they're getting the most out of their therapy, and they're having meaningful interactions, and they're improving their mental health. And when patients cancel, as some of you may have heard, and get rescheduled, it isn't like our therapists are sitting there twiddling their thumbs. They're reaching out to their patients, seeing what happened to them, seeing if they're in need of extra support, and then also seeing if they can reach out to other patients and book someone new and fill vacancies in their schedule. Kaiser claims they're only taking away patient management time when the attrition rate is more than 10%, but this is disingenuous because over the course of last year across Southern California, there wasn't a single Kaiser facility that had an attrition rate lower than 15%. This means that functionally everyone's getting their patient management time reduced. And in fact, the average attrition rate for most therapists in most community and private organizations is 18 to 20%. And so this 10% is just wildly unrealistic. Please vote aye. Thank you.
Final call for Flower Alvarez Lopez and Rachel Forgash. We'll now hear from the individuals in opposition of this item. As your name is called, please come forward. Don Gillum, Mark, Brian Trumba, and allegedly Audra.
Well, Mark, so I'm ambiguous about this. Of course, the idea of cutting down the patient's time right off the bat doesn't sound good. Unfortunately, I do know of an extremely reputable psychiatrist. I won't mention his name. His heyday was around the 80s or 90s. Would have been like a multimillionaire now. And he actually wrote an article, or wrote a paper. He was upset because the psychiatric community's therapy was changing. It used to be that people they had psychology, psychotherapy done for maybe 6 months before any thought of issuing any drug would occur. And then if they did issue medication, it was for less than a year. It was never intended to be for life. And it suddenly switched pharmacopoeia, who, by the way, will add wings to universities and such, the pharmaceutical industry. So they've just got a lot of sway. And that combined with, you need to see this video because everything is Agenda 21. Our country is being taken over. And as hard as it may be for you to grasp, all these things tie together and are intentional. So that's a YouTube title. That's One Our Money System. Start at 6 minutes and 40 seconds and watch that for 17 minutes with your kids. And all these companies own most stock in the world. Now, getting back to the other topic. So, yeah, it changed to, you've got about 10 or 15 minutes to diagnose someone and give them some kind of pharmaceutical med. And doctors really don't get to pick much. In fact, they can be sued if they don't pick something or do what the AMA considers the right thing. So it's all a scam, and...
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Person uses the name Audra. This is interesting because it's like you're doing a resolution to oppose this. What's really going to happen if you oppose it? Is it really going to stop, or is it just you taking a stance? You know what I mean? It's not like you really have any control over what goes on. And Mark is right. It's sad because, on one hand, it's like I do want people to get help, but I don't think that the way that we help people is helping them. It's just medicating them. And these doctors get incentives to do that, to provide these medications, because you should go through and have, be talking things out. It's like nobody wants to be able to do that and really get down to the reason why you feel the way that you do. And a lot of times it's trauma or different things. But instead, it's like right off the bat, it's like medicate them. So then you don't ever get to a place where you can go back over center. And you're just constantly like, trying to, live in a new realm with all these meds that then have all these side effects, and then they can give you more meds for those side effects. I was a really good pharma customer. I believed in it, and it was killing me. But I thought that if I didn't take my medication, I was so terrified of my symptoms that I thought I had to take them, and I didn't realize until I was off of them that it was literally killing me. Like, I wouldn't be here today if I was still on 100 pills a day, because they just keep offering you more. And it's like doctors actually benefit from you being in that state. They don't benefit from you being well. They don't. And that's what's so sad, is that it's not about actually making people well. It's a business, just like everything else. And if it was about making people well, we would see people progressing and not regressing. And then, when you don't want them on one med, you're putting them on another. And I've been down that path, and I know what that looks like. And until you do, you will never understand.
Thank you. Now hear from the individuals that requested to speak by phone. We'll start with our first caller.
Hi, good morning, Chair Vargas and members of the board. I'm here to comment in opposition on item 27. My name is Dawn Gillum, licensed therapist and executive leader for behavioral health at Kaiser Permanente. Regrettably, my schedule did not allow me to return in person again today, but appreciate the opportunity to call in. Equitable mental health access is a priority of Kaiser Permanente, and it is our obligation to optimize the number of clinical appointments for all of our members. Item 27 reads a resolution to oppose Kaiser Permanente's attempt to reduce mental health therapist patient management. To be clear, patient management time is non-clinical time set aside for administrative functions. It is time away from patient care. The language in the resolution is incorrect. Back in 2023, we standardized the amount of PMT across all Southern California to be equitable to all of our therapists. The standardization resulted in no change to the PMT that was already in practice in San Diego. We have struck a good balance between direct patient clinical time and PMT that supports our therapists and advances our shared goal of providing high-quality, accessible services to all of our members. The move to a standard amount of time did not result in a change of PMT in San Diego, as 4 hours has been the practice in San Diego. We have hired over 250 additional internal KP therapists across Southern California and have contracted with several hundred external therapists, resulting in reduced caseloads so our therapists can provide patients with timely access and more focused care management. Our patients want to see their own therapist regularly, and we are obligated to meet this need. This continual effort to decrease clinical time with patients interferes with what our patients need and deserve. Thank you for your consideration, and we respectfully ask for your opposition of the proposed resolution under item 27, as it is bad for patient care. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
It's truth. This item refers to a pandemic. Not sure what that is. I do remember a lockdown era and fraud that happened circa 2020 and went on for a few years. It was an avoidable event if only people had stopped believing lies from the county and also entities like Kaiser. This item also says mental health is worse than ever since, the county's lockdown measures. It's important to give credit where credit is due, and anything less is more county misinformation. Interesting to learn that county government is in some kind of competition with Northern California in regards to therapists working at Kaiser. Will the county speak up for therapists at other hospitals or only those at Kaiser? I'm also going to argue that what hospitals like Kaiser provide is not even real health care. Real health care is a balanced diet and proper exercise. So I'm going to instead call on the county to oppose Kaiser's false health care, to denounce Kaiser and all its leadership, and to reduce all political campaign funding acceptance by perhaps some of these supervisors and many, many others who sold out to Big Pharma, and to no longer accept such a low standard of care again. I think it's important to flip the script and choose a third way in regards to other solutions. In fact, the patient management time that actually needs to be reduced is certain supervisors who talk so long that they seem like a mental patient. I request a timer for every time a supervisor speaks, just like the city of San Diego does. It causes a trend of burnout in our speaker workforce, and that can potentially deteriorate the mental health or sleep hours of people that sacrifice their energies on items such as this one, which seems political with a guise of helping patients, but really politically supporting purple shirts and red shirts who work at Kaiser hospitals. No thanks. I've seen there's nothing there to trust. They don't provide real care, and they even shut down meetings. And how are you going to really go against Kaiser if they fund tons of organizations you supervisors support? We don't know. Conflict of interest.
Thank you. And Chairwoman Vargas, that concludes public comment on this item. Now turn it over to Vice Chair Lawson-Remer.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate the speakers. Just want to give a little context here. I brought this forward because we all know that we continue to face a crisis with mental health care workers in our county. And the big question that we have to grapple with is how do we ensure that we have enough mental health providers in our workforce to ensure that everyone who needs care can get the quality care that they need and deserve. And this is a complex issue because I think Kaiser's approach to trying to sort of grapple with the shortage, the severe shortage we have of mental health care workers, is to try to squeeze more out of those that we do have. And I understand, certainly understand our caller from Kaiser. I understand how difficult of a situation that we're all in. And I know that personally, I used to be a Kaiser patient, and I switched in large part because I could not get a therapist. So this is a very personal story for me. However, in the very big picture, we are not solving our crisis of mental health in our county or in our country if we're burning out providers, if they are so overworked and overtaxed in trying to provide patient care that they can't do a good job with the patients that they do have, and they eventually burn out and leave. We are then contributing to an ongoing spiral of losing more and more good people in a profession that desperately needs more and more good people. And at the same time, we're undermining the care of patients because they're not able to receive quality care from their therapists if their therapists are, trying to multitask, sending appointment notices and looking at doing other sort of patient management work at the same time that they're trying to focus 100% on the person who's sitting in front of them. So this approach of cutting hours undermines current patient care and contributes to burnout and our widening spiral of losing quality healthcare professionals. So this is the wrong solution to a shared problem. We absolutely do need more healthcare providers and more therapists in our county. We need to think much more ambitiously about how to get there. And we get there and we get to a place where we're actually able to provide the mental health care that people desperately need by increasing wages, increasing benefits, hiring more people in this profession, helping people get the training that they need to enter this profession that can take years and is really difficult. That's how we solve this crisis, not by trying to squeeze more out of and squeeze more juice from a lemon that there's nothing less to squeeze. So that's why I brought this today. I think it's really important that we as a county take a position because we are ultimately the behavioral health provider of last resort in San Diego County, and this is a really critical issue for constituents and for people across our region. So with that, I'd like to make a motion for my colleagues to support this item. Thanks.
Supervisor Montgomery Stepp on behalf of the chairwoman.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to second. Vice Chair, thank you for your partnership on this item. Very important to me as well. Ensuring that behavioral health providers have optimal working conditions is vital to ensuring that patients in their time of need can receive the highest quality care possible while also preserving the longevity of our behavioral health workforce. And we have talked about this quite a bit, commissioned studies on how to make the industry more viable and to retain folks that decide to do this work, and this is certainly a part of those studies. These workers serve a vital role ensuring the mental and social well-being of our residents, and as such, they deserve working conditions that prioritize their social and mental well-being. Our behavioral health professionals cannot deliver optimal care for their patients if they are left with inadequate time to consult with colleagues and service agencies that also serve their patients, fill out the necessary paperwork, and design individualized treatment plans that meet the specific goals and needs of their patients. I also want to thank Kaiser for reaching out and providing additional information. Mr. Soto, thank you for addressing some of the things in the letter. Hopefully, we can move forward and get this worked out so that our residents and those within the Kaiser system, including the county employees, can be better served. And with that, again, I second and support this. Thank you.
Chairwoman is holding up a sign. This is absolutely ditto. Thank you, Vice Chair. I'll turn it over to Supervisor Desmond.
Okay, thank you. On this one, I'm struggling with this one. It's my understanding that San Diego County is already practicing the standard 4 hours of patient management time for their therapists. And when the notation is made about Southern California, this really refers to either Orange, Riverside, or LA County. San Diego County is already doing this, is my understanding. And this is a very specific item, and I'm assuming overall navigation or negotiations. which normally, there's many different facets of negotiations. There's give, there's take, there's balance. I have no idea what else is part of these negotiations. And personally, I don't have a clue as to how much time for patient management for therapists should be for at Kaiser. I have no idea what that should be. So I don't think we should be part of this. This is part of overall negotiations. This is just one part of that. I can't support this with the information that I have today. Thank you.
Thank you. With a motion by Vice Chair Lawson-Remer, seconded by Supervisor Montgomery Stepp, please vote. Chairwoman Vargas, that motion passes with Supervisor Anderson and Supervisor Desmond voting no, all of the supervisors being present and voting aye. Next item for discussion is item 30, approve an ordinance amending Article 15B of the San Diego County Administrative Code relating to Health and Human Services charges and fees. We'll turn it over to the county team for a presentation.
Good morning, Chairwoman Vargas and members of the board. The Health and Human Services Agency remains committed to maintaining the highest customer service and quality work product while maintaining and, when possible, reducing costs. We are here today to request your approval for proposed updates to fees and rates charged by the services for 3 HHSA departments: Public Health Services, Medical Care Services, and Behavioral Health Services. Fees are not a substantial driver for revenue for the HHSA's $3.2 billion budget, and the fiscal impact of these updates is estimated to be at just over $109,000 for next year. I'd like to turn it over now to Amy Thompson, the Executive Finance Director for the agency, to walk you through the proposed fee updates.
Thank you, Dr. McDonald. Board Policy B29 requires full cost recovery for services provided to agencies or individuals. To ensure compliance with this policy, our departments have performed a comprehensive analysis of services provided to examine the tasks and functions performed and their direct and indirect costs. The board last approved revisions to HHSA's fees on May 23, 2023. In preparing the update for fiscal year 24-25, all 93 fees were analyzed with 47 updates proposed. 46 fees required no change, as 42 are tied to the section of County Administrative Code 15B, which sets the fee as the lesser of the published Medi-Cal rate or calculated county cost. And 4 are tied to existing B29 full cost recovery waivers previously approved by the board. The proposed updated ordinance represents a comprehensive package that seeks to support the cost of providing HHSA services while maintaining fees that are fair and equitable for customers. The majority of updates are in the public health laboratory, with 1 update each in medical care services and behavioral health services. Overall, the 47 fees impacted reflect updates for increases in cost of doing business, decreases to reflect process efficiencies, or deletions or additions to reflect stakeholder needs or current use. On the next few slides, I will review the updates proposed, grouped by program area. The 45 public health lab fees are either tied to environmental testing, such as testing of drinking water or foodborne illness investigations, or clinical testing, such as tests for communicable disease outbreaks. For the lab, most of the stakeholders are other county departments. Therefore, these fees are not a significant revenue generator for HHSA or for the county enterprise. We do, however, keep these fees updated for those circumstances in which costs are recoverable through federal or state funding sources or through other jurisdictions. Increases primarily reflect updated salary and benefit information and higher materials costs in some areas, but there are also decreases as well, reflecting lowered overall costs for certain tests tied to implementing process improvements. You will also see on the slide that 6 new fees are proposed for tests currently being performed by the lab, and 4 fees are being deleted for tests that are no longer necessary. In our Behavioral Health Services Department, there is a private pay fee for the county-owned and operated Edgemoor Distinct Part Skilled Nursing Facility, in which an increase is proposed to align with updated full cost recovery information. At Edgemoor, patients are typically covered under Medi-Cal, but there is a rate established for those rare private pay scenarios. In our medical care services department, the pharmacy provides direct services for the San Diego County Psychiatric Hospital, Edgemoor Skilled Nursing Facility, clinic services, and other programs. There is an existing pharmacy dispensing fee charged primarily to county departments for dispensing medications. Today's action will add clarifying language to include the medical care services pharmacy dispensing fee as a distinct category within Admin Code 15B and update the fee to the latest Medi-Cal rate. Lastly, we are providing an update on the tobacco retail license fee. The Tobacco Retail Licensing Program is responsible for oversight and administration of the County Tobacco Retail License, or TRL, ordinance that was enacted in July 2021, requiring tobacco retailers in the unincorporated area of the county to pay an annual fee for a TRL. On June 14th, 2022, the board adopted a 3-year phase-in plan for the TRL fee with direction to seek alternative funding sources to offset the fee into the future. Revenue from the fee supports a portion of the expected annual cost recovery for just over 3 staff, as well as general program administration and implementation costs. The current annual fee of $730 was calculated based on 50% of full cost recovery for fiscal year 2022-23, with realignment revenue covering the balance. For fiscal year 24-25, tobacco program grants from the California Department of Justice have been identified to offset and support the TRL program expenses and activities, allowing for the fee to remain at $730. The availability of grant funding will be assessed annually, and proposed increases in the TRL fee will be brought to the board for consideration in the future should grant funding no longer be available. For example, in fiscal year 25-26, due to the ending of some of the DOJ grant funding, the TRL fee is expected to increase, and in fiscal year 26-27, projections show that retailers would be expected to pay the full TRL fee cost at that time, as the DOJ grants will have ended. In summary, the requested actions before you today are to approve the introduction of the ordinance amending sections of the San Diego County Administrative Code related to HHSA fees. If the board takes the action as recommended, then on May 21st, the proposed ordinance will be brought back to the board for consideration and adoption. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of Chairwoman Vargas, we'll now call for the public speakers on this item. We have 11 requests to speak, 5 in person, 6 requesting to speak by phone. For those that requested to speak by phone on item 30, please dial into the conference line using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speakers, starting with those in favor of this item, followed by those in opposition. I'd like to invite forward Arkan Somo and Fred Mokau. And they'll be followed by Mark, allegedly Audra, and Bryant Rumbaugh in opposition. Yes. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board, and I'll ask you to please state your name for the audio record.
Yes. Thank you. Good morning. Chairwoman Vargas, County Board of Supervisors, and staff. My name is Arkan Somo. I'm the president of the Neighborhood Market Association. I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak before you this morning. The Neighborhood Market Association is in support of the staff recommendation of the fee proposed. We believe that the staff did a great job in reaching out to retailers, informed them about the process, and also reached out to the Neighborhood Market Association. And we are very grateful for that, and we appreciate their effort in that regard. However, we heard a lot from our members. They're very concerned, deeply concerned about some of the information regarding the renewal fee. Chairwoman Vargas, we reached out to your chief of staff as well as the other offices, and Fernando been very kind, very professional, and he actually forwarded to us the link from the staff that was given to clarify that particular provision. The link was for the uniform licensing procedure, expiration and renewal. I read it very carefully, okay, 3 times, and there is nowhere that I saw that the business will automatically forfeit its pre-existing status if they don't pay the fee and they submit the application with 20 days. So I can tell you, I'm a business owner. Been in San Diego for 42 years, owned businesses, restaurant, convenience store, and liquor store for the last 40 years. My wife and I manages that. God knows over the last 4 decades, we missed a couple payments. Out of towns, the manager put it under a pile, but I don't remember ever losing my pre-existing status because I didn't pay the payment. So, my question to you, esteemed board members, which government issue permit that you're aware of that you will lose your status if you did not pay it?
Thank you.
Thank
Time
you.
is up. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
One person uses the name Audra. Cigarettes are going to go up, dang it. Sucks. Good for you, Jim, though, right? Because you're, anyway. Where's Dr. Death? I feel like she should be here talking about the money she's getting. We should actually defund HHSA. There's many reasons. One of them is she put us in a, locked us down when there was no cases of anything, of any invisible killer dot. And then after she did that, there was one, right? Oh my gosh. That was smart. That was so smart. It means that it works, right? When you actually lock people down. And I've asked for an isolation of COVID and it doesn't exist. That's weird. From HHS, they said that. It's crazy. But still, we have them doing all these things. And one of the things that HHSA is involved in is child trafficking. They traffic children, especially these illegals. That should make you upset, Nora, that these people, these children are being dropped off. They are, Jim. That's what's so scary. I'm going to uncover this because it's very sad to see that they're taking them from different places and dropping them in homes in the middle of the night. These children that just came don't have anybody, but they're going to go to someone real special. It's going to take care of them. Either murder them, molest them, rape them, whatever. It's a business. That's what's so sad. It's a business to traffic people. And these children are being exploited. And HHS is a part of it. And I'm not joking. And that's what's so sad, is that all of these nefarious things can go on, and we just give them more money to do it. That's why, where is Dr. Death? I'd love to say it to her face, because she's involved in that. Just like with all the other programs for children, they're meant to traffic them, not to protect them, period.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mark, evidently raising your fees for Health and Human Services is our county's vision of a just, sustainable, and resilient future for all. What BS. So it's important to understand that this is all, again, it's everything being privatized in our system. And a lot of people on Medi-Cal think, oh, this is great, I'm getting medical services for free. No, they try and recover that at the end of your life. If you got a house or something, they will take it from you. And there are people that do trusts and things to avoid that. However, the government is trying to get rid of any way you could avoid their recovery costs. And it's not just if you go to the doctor, use one of the services either. It's like you might only use your service once in your lifetime, maybe $600. They're probably paying $600 a month. The government is paying on your behalf, subsidizing this monthly, like a fee to an insurance program. And you're going to owe all that out of your house or assets or property at the end of your life. All this is a total scam because it's intended, and if you see Rosa Corey's video, all these titles are on one of these three, except the FEMA one. It's just an article. And Rosa Corey talks about this a lot and describes the privatization of our society, Agenda 21. She's a California expert witness, and you should see this video, parts 1, 2, and 3. At least see part 1, and you will know right away what a scam all this is. And she says right in the videos, I think in section 2, in part 2, that it's all tied together. Everything that's happening here, none of it is apart from anything else. It is the UN taking over globally. They're doing it in countries all over the world. It's not just here.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the individuals that requested to speak by phone. We'll start with our first caller.
John Elliott.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Oh, is this, am I supposed to speak now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Good morning. Yes, Board of Supervisors. You know, my name is John Elliott. My wife and I own a small market up here in the Descanso area. It's kind of an outdoor store. I'll sell you firewood, sleeping bags, and chains for your car. We also have a small tobacco section, spirits, some cheap cigars, a little bit of smokeless tobacco products. You know, right now the state charges us $250, and excuse me, with the this new county fee of $730, I've got you know, it's $1,000 a year. You know, I only sell about 10 cartons a month. So it takes, the profit I make on that, it takes me over 2 weeks just to pay my fees. You know, and it's just, it's very onerous. A lot of these larger companies, the Albertsons, these supermarkets, they make more money in 1 day selling tobacco products than it takes me 2 weeks to sell that same product. You know, and I just don't feel there's real equity there. We should have some type of a sliding scale that that little guys like me aren't harmed. You know, I sit on the planning group up here, and I see we've got the cannabis socially equitable ordinance that we've all been working on. You know, and there's a lot of similarities between the tobacco licensing and the cannabis licensing. You know, they're both vices. They both come down from the state. They have a lot of the same vectors, distances to sensitive areas, densities, et cetera, et cetera. But in our cannabis, our social equity cannabis program, we are recognizing that you got big players out there in the world, and they will dominate the market, and they will run out the little guy. And that's exactly what's happening with this $730 tobacco fee that's really only 10% of what it should be.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Yeah. Hi, Paul LeBeau. These fee increases are neither fair nor reasonable, as the board letter would have you believe. Frankly, I think that most of the county cannot afford such increases in medical fees, some of which are for necessary services. I mean, their finances are already reeling from inflation, natural disasters, and the threat of raised taxes and add fees to make up for the massive deficits created by government. Increasing the fees by 14 to 46% for tests that have resulted in unnecessary beach closures is a ridiculous idea. What are we doing? Paying for more beach closures, more damage to tourism, business, and our reputation? I thought you wanted to help mental patients like those at Edgemore. Increasing the private pay rate by 14% when the cost of living rose at most 5% is inflationary and outrageous. So what will happen? More psychos on the streets? And raising the pharmacy dispensing fee by 100% is disgusting. The good thing is that it will give people a chance to test out the slower but safer natural and non-traditional cures, as many of us have been suggesting all along. So maybe a veiled thank you for this one item, but there's no justifications provided for these fee increases, and I urge you to reject this totally dangerous proposal.
Into the caller before you.
And to the caller before me.
It's all the design, brother. It's the design.
Now hear from the next caller.
It's truth. A lot of great comments. I want to give a shout out to Archon. Great loophole find. In order to avoid these crazy fees, I suggest eliminating the entire Health and Human Services Agency. As long as it's run by Bergman and his BS ham sandwich line, people who are homeless will be at risk of being swept off the streets with all their possessions stolen and then locked up in his $1 million prison day clause that he would happily lock his wife in. Ironically, the wastewater test at $387 is the most expensive test. And it's kind of like covering the salary for Bergman and then hearing him open his mouth. Toxic. Instead of adding 18,500 more behavioral health workers, let's save the county money, eliminate HHSA, and then these fees could be waived all together, because otherwise they got 31 new fee increases with 7 brand new fees. I'm curious why foodborne tests are cheaper if they come up negative. So if they're positive, the price suddenly skyrockets. The gene expert test for $25 is nothing but a faster, faulty PCR test. And apparently there's now a monkey pox PCR test. That's bananas. For the record, I was there to play that, and I said I love Gwen Stefani, okay? Anyways, why is the Edgemore private pay rate skyrocketing 14% up to over $1,000? Is that more purple shirt extortion? I'd also like to know how many of these membrane filtration chemicals and products were created by Kingley Technologies. That's the local company that makes the chemicals to purify to death toilet to tap water, owned by Craig Netwig, who's accused of neglecting, abusing, and starving horses to death, as well as flashing a gun at a CBS 8 news crew with zero repercussions. And since Wilma Wooten is the face of COVID-19, according to Eric McDonald, then I believe the county should sue her, too, to recover costs from all the damage she sowed all over the county with her lies. That has also resulted in inflation, which is your raising these.
Thank you. And Chairwoman Vargas, that concludes public comment on this item. On Chairwoman's behalf, we'll turn it over to Supervisor Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I realize that our vote today is only on the tobacco retail license fee, but I was wondering if staff might be able to inform us how the TRL renewal process came about and how it compares with license renewal policies in other jurisdictions in San Diego County.
If I can go ahead and defer to Dr. Hernandez from Public Health Services to walk through a little bit of the history on this, that'd be great.
Supervisor, thank you so much for that question. As you saw on the presentation, we are new in terms of implementing the TRL program, and we're basing the TRL program operations and implementation practices based on the ordinance directed by your board, along with the uniform guidelines noted. So we are, based on that information, that is how we are basing our renewal process, based on the guidelines noted in the ordinance. We are also doing some best practices with other TRL programs, and we are still learning that process and being flexible in our process as well and working with the retailers. So that's what we're doing.
Thank you very much. Is it possible for staff to work with the association and see if there isn't some common ground that they can come to? One of the concerns that I have is, you work so hard for these licenses, and no one sets out not to pay on time, but not to have the ability, if it does slip through the cracks, to lose your business just because you're on the 21st day because a manager put it under a stack of paper and didn't realize the importance. Is that possible moving forward, or do you need a board letter to do that, or how does that work?
Absolutely, Supervisor. Thank you for that comment and that observation. And we actually, today is the first day that retailers can start renewing their licenses, and they expire at the end of June. The uniform licensing procedure gives a 20-day window, which is short, but we want to work with the retailers. We will be actively outreaching to them to ensure that the very short 4-page renewal form and the documentation of their state licenses is provided to us before their licenses expire. As long as they can get it in before they expire, which is not for another 60 days, I think that we should be in good shape. There's 260 retailers. We know who they are, and we will be actively outreaching them with them starting today.
Thank you very much. And if there are if some of those licenses don't get renewed, I'll be interested in the percent that don't get renewed, because maybe that will help us form the policy to make sure that we're meeting the needs. The challenges in California, like everywhere, with inflation and everything else, we heard from the gentleman from Descanso and how difficult it is for him. I don't want to be an additional burden. I want to make sure that our economy is thriving. So thank you very much. And with that, I'd like to make a motion in support of the board policy change.
Thank you. On behalf of the Chairwoman, Vice Chair Lawson-Remer.
Hi, happy to second that. Thank you. You just want to make a couple comments. I think, as I said yesterday, I think aiming towards full cost recovery is, in general, a good approach. So I appreciate this work. I know you've had a lot of consultations. It would be great to kind of continue those along the lines of what Supervisor Anderson has identified, so that we're not inflexible. Things sometimes go sideways, and we don't want to be an added burden or make stuff harder for folks. That being said, I think the last thing that we want to be doing as a county is being in the business is subsidizing tobacco sales. And so I think getting towards full cost recovery, especially for these tobacco licenses, is really important. I'm happy to support that today. Thanks.
On behalf of Chairwoman Vargas, Supervisor Desmond.
I want to echo my colleagues' comments on this. Even if somebody is late and they break the 20-day, they just don't get it in, I'm hoping that we work with entities towards compliance instead of punitive action. We want them to stay in business. They got employees. This is their family income. And so let's make sure we're working with people if stuff happens, and we just got to make sure that we're not punitive too soon if we can work with somebody.
Absolutely, Supervisor Desmond. We will be, in fact, following this very closely, actually on a weekly basis, to be sure that any that look like they're getting close to their expiration date have been given every opportunity to renew on time.
But you're saying if they don't make the expiration date, then it's fait accompli, it's done? That's kind of what I'm hearing. And I'd like to, even if they miss that, if we can, send them out a notice and say, hey, you're late, we'll give you, 14 days, something reasonable, if that's, I'd rather work in that direction than just drop dead. If they're on vacation, something happens, I don't know. I'm trying to get towards compliance instead of punitive action.
I can jump in for a moment. We would need to double check the ordinance language, the actual language. There is a deadline. There is some flexibility built into the ordinance, and we could double check as to the deadline. What they lose is the grandfather status, and it's a new application. It doesn't bar them from seeking a license. It just doesn't allow for the grandfathering piece of it.
All right, we'll work with Archon and the Neighborhood Market Association. Let's do the best we can for compliance. Thanks.
Supervisor Montgomery Stepp.
Thank you so much. Just one clarifying question. What is the runway in order to be able to renew the license or be notified that you need to renew the license? Like, what is our process?
Well, the current, thank you for that question, Supervisor. The current process follows the uniform licensing procedure, which asks for the renewal no earlier than 60 days and no later than 40 days, which is only a 20-day window. Today is the 60-day mark, and we would like all of them to be during that period, but we will absolutely work with retailers before their license expires, which is the end of June, to be sure that if they are at risk of losing a grandfather status, that they get their license renewed.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. McDonald. Now, I would also add that our process actually started last month. We conducted multiple community forums. We've sent letters and emails to our retailers to share not only about this proposed fee, but also about the application renewal process. We also will be sending further letters and emails, calls to each of the retailers, and offer to be side by side on the phone with them to fill out the application, in addition to go on site if needed as well. Our goal, as Dr. McDonald said, is to be flexible and work with our retailers.
Yeah, and that's why I was asking, because I think there's a lot of effort in making sure that people are able to submit everything they need to in a timely manner. And so I think that it sounds like we are doing our due diligence on that end. And I want to make sure that that's clear. Because any type of extension, I just feel legally also in other areas we would have to show that same type of lenience, and we haven't had that discussion yet. Thank you very much.
Supervisor Anderson?
Madam Chair, I don't know I don't want to get out of order here, but we have the good fortune of having Mr. Somo, who's the head of the Neighborhood Market Association. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to just ask him if this solves his main issue with it, because I'd like to put this to bed. Yeah, if he just came and just said, hey, would this solve the solution? Are we moving in the right direction?
Chairwoman's indicated we should have county staff follow up.
Okay.
Well, just if I could jump in. The neighbor, I guess, does everybody's license expire the same time?
Yes, sir, at the end of June.
Okay, so the Neighborhood Market Association could actually help us in that notification process to all of your members as well. So we'd appreciate that effort on the markets. You may be already doing it, but maybe helping us in that effort to make sure everybody gets the word through your efforts as well.
Supervisor Desmond, the chairwoman's indicating that they're not the only stakeholders.
Oh, okay. Well.
At the chairwoman's request, we have a motion by Supervisor Anderson, second by Vice Chair Lawson-Remer. Please vote. Chairwoman Vargas, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye. Next item for discussion is item 31, the Cannabis Social Equity Program. I'll turn it over to the county team for a presentation. While the county team is getting settled, for those that requested to speak by phone on item 31, we'll ask you to please dial into the conference line using the instructions that were provided to you.
Good morning, Chairwoman Vargas and Board. I'm Andrew Strong, the Director of the Office of Equity and Racial Justice, and I'm joined by Brandon Lewis, Group Program Manager from my office as well. Today, we're presenting recommendations for the Cannabis Social Equity Program, the first steps to addressing the harms that were done by the war on drugs and the overcriminalization of marijuana to our most impacted communities, shown in our social equity assessment. The war on drugs was a collection of policies and laws during the 70s, 80s, and 90s that have since been amended or overturned, but have many unintended consequences and negative impacts that are still being felt in communities today. We continue to work in collaboration with Planning and Development Services and other departments on the overarching socially equitable cannabis program. However, it's important to establish the social equity program prior to the adoption of a commercial cannabis ordinance to allow social equity entrepreneurs an opportunity to prepare to apply for their appropriate licensing. On January 27, 2021, the Board of Supervisors directed staff to implement measures to provide economic access and equity in the cannabis industry. This included components of a social equity program, zoning ordinance amendments, and a licensing permitting system. On March 3, 2021, the board directed the Office of Equity and Racial Justice to lead the development of the framework and strategy to initiate the social equity program and coordinate this with the land use permitting system being developed by Planning and Development Services. On October 28, 2022, the social equity assessment for commercial cannabis was finalized, and after initial reviews and edits, the final equity assessment included numerous recommendations for addressing and repairing the harms from the war on drugs and the criminalization of marijuana. Since the completion of the assessment, our office has worked with County Council and other county departments to develop legally viable recommendations for the social equity program. Today, we're asking your board to consider and adopt social equity program criteria and tiers, and consider and provide policy direction on the Cannabis Social Equity Ordinance Matrix and Cannabis Oversight Community Collaborative. Today's recommendations include options for the Social Equity Entrepreneurs Program that will assist those impacted by the criminalization of marijuana to participate in the legal cannabis industry, and a Social Equity Beneficiaries Program for those impacted by the war on drugs and the criminalization of marijuana that may not want to participate in the legal cannabis industry, but are deserving of some form of benefit. Now I'll turn it over to Brandon Lewis, our program manager overseeing the implementation of this program.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you. The Social Equity Entrepreneurs Program aims to create a robust programming that can offer numerous resources and content. The program will include business and technical assistance that will be paramount to the success of our social equity entrepreneurs. OERJ plans on hosting numerous workshops and webinars, which will be recorded and available to access at any time by participants. There will be workshops that will address contracts, business formation, access to capital, real estate, and software solutions, to name a few. There will also be a licensing-related workshops, which will focus on ensuring applicants are aware of the steps needed to get licensed at the state and local levels. The county was recently awarded a Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development grant to assist equity applicants. OERJ will be utilizing the funding for grants directly to social equity participants. The funding can be used for rent, state and local licensing fees, equipment, training, and legal assistance. Grant funding will be awarded via a qualified lottery process similar to other jurisdictions. Cannabis record expungement can be started immediately once participants begin the application process. OERJ will be working with the Public Defender's Office and their Fresh Start program. OERJ heard from the community that cannabis business ownership and entrepreneurship is not for everyone who may be a social equity applicant. We heard from the community that investing in impacted communities is a key to a successful social equity program. We will leverage programs that are already established within the county, such as behavioral health services and Fresh Start program, while adding additional benefits as needed. We are also working with the San Diego City College and San Diego State University, among other schools, to create partnerships and pathways for our beneficiaries to access certificate and degree programs to continue their education. OERJ will also create a non-cannabis small business grants program for qualified social equity beneficiaries that can be utilized to help start and bolster their small businesses. OERJ will also be providing connections to career readiness and career exploration opportunities in partnership with other local agencies. To implement the Social Equity Beneficiaries Program, additional funding will be requested in this year's operational plan process. Next, I will be discussing the social equity eligibility tiers. The applicants who meet these eligibility criteria would receive benefits and programming and have been the most impacted by cannabis criminalization. The social equity assessment recommended eligibility criteria that included race, family relationship, and indigenous lineage. There are also pending legal cases throughout the state and country surrounding social equity eligibility criteria and having a residency requirement that violates interstate commerce clauses. Considering these lawsuits and what we have learned from other jurisdictions, we created a low-income component versus residency requirement or zip code eligibility. For the board's consideration, the following criteria was formed with County Council while considering feedback from the state. Tier A focuses on individuals incarcerated for a San Diego cannabis-related crime prior to the passing of Proposition 64, adult use of marijuana, while Tier B focuses on individuals that have been convicted or arrested for a San Diego cannabis-related crime, along with a low-income component. Another item for the board's consideration today is the formation of an oversight committee, commission, or group as recommended in the social equity assessment. OERJ conducted research of other jurisdictions' oversight groups and found that the recommendation is in line with what other jurisdictions have done in this space. The proposed commission or group would assist in monitoring and recommending updates to the Cannabis Social Equity Entrepreneurs and Beneficiaries programs while providing input on other aspects of the county's socially equitable cannabis program and would also report back to the board annually. The commission is proposed to consist of 9 members with at least 1 representative appointed by each supervisor district, 4 others that will apply through an application process, and at least 50% of the group will need to meet social equity eligibility requirements. Our final recommendation is the social equity related ordinance language. The 4 ordinance options presented today provide the greatest chance for social equity applicants to be successful and are rooted in stakeholder and community feedback received throughout this process, and were also recommendations from our social equity assessment. First, social equity ownership requirement of minimum 51% ownership in a cannabis business will allow the social equity business owners to have a majority control in their business. In many instances, social equity applicants will have to take on investment from other companies, business partners, or investors. This is a best practice among other jurisdictions and also is a recommendation from the state. In order to receive social equity benefits, such as being eligible for grant funding and to apply during the recommended 3-year social equity window for a cannabis business license, the business must meet these minimum requirements. OERJ would verify this annually. Social equity cannabis businesses should be provided with a 3-year social equity window to start their cannabis licensing process. All non-social equity businesses cannot start the cannabis licensing process until this 3-year social equity timeframe has concluded. This will allow for social equity businesses to find viable properties, find partners, secure capital, and open their doors prior to much larger, well-funded operators opening their businesses. In other jurisdictions, it has taken social equity applicants roughly 2 years to get their doors open. Working on finding investment, working with contractors, going through inspections, and the licensing process is difficult. The third ordinance impose a license ceiling for cannabis storefront retail businesses only. An equity license ceiling is not a cap. The ceiling can be raised in the future. We are not proposing an equity license ceiling for other cannabis types due to stakeholder feedback and industry feedback. In the April 27, 2022 HDL board letter, HDL report, fiscal revenue analysis of the commercial cannabis industry, it was noted that the county can accommodate 20 additional storefront retailers, totaling 25. Lastly, social equity storefront retail licenses should have at least 50% reserved for social equity applicants. This would mean there would be a minimum of 13 storefront retailers reserved for social equity. In other jurisdictions, this has been the most popular and sought-after license type. This would mean only 13 storefront retailers would be able to start the licensing process during the social equity 3-year window. The process to decide storefront retailers would be through a qualified lottery process. I will now turn it back over to Andrew.
Thank you, Brandon. In closing, we are asking the board to receive the update on the development of the social equity program and to consider and adopt the social equity criteria tiers, cannabis social equity ordinance matrix, and cannabis oversight community collaborative. Based on the direction provided today, we will return to the board with any future actions that are needed to implement the cannabis social equity programming. Subject to your questions, this concludes our presentation.
Thank you. I'll now call forward the public speakers on this item. We have 18 requests to speak, 4 in person, 14 requesting to speak by phone. Also note for the record that we did not receive any e-comments on this item. For any members of the public that requested to speak on item 31 by phone, please dial into the conference line using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speakers. All speakers are in opposition. As your name is called, please come forward. I'd like to invite Mark, allegedly Audra, Brian Trumba, and Gambler. I've called your name. Please come forward. Again, you'll have 2 minutes to address the board, and please state your name for the audio record.
Your name. My person uses the name Audra. I would like to give this propaganda update a warm handoff to Nora. Can I give this back to you? Because it's so sad to think that it actually destroys people's ability to make money. So when you're saying it's legal and then you're like, it's only legal if you pay us money and do all these things, and then we're going to regulate you and make sure that you don't make any money and we take it all from you. Come out of the woodworks, come out of the black market. It's sad, because then it just screws up the whole business, really. It takes people, and they can't make money doing it. I mean, it's nice for the consumer because everything is super cheap, but it's like when people were making money on this, it's like now you want them to come out of the woodwork so you can take the money from them to provide nothing, but just allowing them to do something that they were already doing. And it's like, it's only okay if you can make money off of it. Right? It's like we're helping the war on drugs. Like this is another war on drugs. Because first of all, this is a medication and it's something that actually helps people. It's not just a drug. Like people use it as that, but it's also medicinal. And it's very helpful in that. But as soon as we demonize something and like, I mean, social equity, it's such a bunch of BS. It's like being at Sandag and having them talk about social equity, and it took them like months to figure out what that definition was. And then it was different between the people and the workers. Like the workers, we want you to have all these things. The people, it's like just a little bit, not as much. You don't deserve as much. So it's just sad to think that you guys can come in here and put your hands in everything, and it actually, you know, takes away from people being able to provide for their families.
Next speaker, please.
Mark, if supervisors want to address the harms caused by cannabis criminalization, stop criminalizing it. The people did not want your totalitarian criminalization when they voted to legalize cannabis. Government perverts everything, and this corporation just wants to make money no matter what. That being said, it's not that I'm telling people they should all do drugs, and I have nothing against people partying. A lot of people I know did when I was young. I don't anymore. I don't care about it. It's a waste of time. But there's a reason, though, that it's happening. It's not an accident that hallucinogens and cannabis and everything is being made legal in our society. Just like in 1969 and early 70s, there was a lot of LSD and coke and crystal methadone going around, heroin. People were like tuning out and doing drugs. And the reason is the government doesn't want you to pay attention to these things that are really happening. That's the real reason. So I'm going to concentrate on two things. These are videos on one of these three. This one is on BitChute or YouTube. And as you can see detailed in this YouTube video, our illegitimate government has recognized the United Nations Treaty of 1945 as being above our Constitution, the supreme law of the land. With no representation for our citizens, this treaty is not pursuant to our U.S. Constitution and is therefore null and void. The charter by President Harry Truman was rushed through the U.S. Senate without copies to guide the senators. Truman and the Senate had no authority to make a treaty that infringes on the right of citizens. I can't even read all this because I'm out of time. You also need to see the Rosa Corey video. Start at 3 minutes and 30 seconds on the UN and how you're being screwed out of everything.
Next speaker, please.
Gambler here. Number one, I really don't trust this dude. This dude took something I said out of context and tried to have the police come in and arrest me, and I find that very, I don't trust him at all. So besides that, I don't understand what you guys are trying to do, because I see you guys shutting down pot shops all over the place. The ones that aren't following all the rules that you set up in play and all that stuff. But at the same time, you want to go ahead and provide legal help to these people. So which one is it? Do you want to help them, or do you just want to take their money? I think really that's really what it comes down to, is that you see an opportunity, you're trying to find any ways to gain access to all this money in the pot industry and exploit it for your personal gain. I'm fully aware of that. You guys ignore all problems. Anyone trying to address anything with you, you call the cops on them, which I have a major problem with. And I have no problem speaking out about it. And if you guys ever want to impose that, I could finally fight against it, because I don't plan on spending the money to go up against you guys. It's pointless. The judges are elected, which means most likely groups had homeless voters, dead people, voted them in. And so therefore, they're protected. You guys are protected. Everyone's protected doing bullshit shit. I don't like it. But what I'm hoping for by the end of this year is the wrong person will win. When that happens, you're screwed.
Thank you. We're now here from the individuals that requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you'll be unmuted and you'll hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. Or remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. We'll start with our first caller.
Barbara Gordon. I'm a public health educator, and I recognize the relationship between substance abuse and mental health, which has been a long-standing and complex public health issue. I am here today to strongly oppose the social equity program. Research has shown that marijuana and other substance abuse is associated with the increased risk of mental health issues. Marijuana contributes to drug abuse and addiction, which is the leading cause of homelessness. As the board looks to expand marijuana businesses, I would urge the supervisors to consider the relationship of marijuana use that plays as you support those with mental health challenges. I urge you to seek long-term solutions to problems related to addiction and homelessness, which can all be interrelated instead of increasing marijuana businesses. Marijuana is advertised to reduce stress, anxiety, and other health conditions. But studies have shown marijuana can directly worsen symptoms of anxiety, depression, schizophrenia. As a community, we ask ourselves why the board continues to prioritize this industry. The community does not support or want the expansion of these businesses in the unincorporated area, especially when it affects the health and safety of residents, particularly young people. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Good morning. My name is Terry Ann Skelly. I'm a parent of 3 adult sons, and I work on good public health policy in land use decisions at my county planning group. I came today to oppose any more county funds and resources be allocated that would increase the number of marijuana businesses in the unincorporated area of the county. The needs of our citizens are great, and increasing the number of pot shops does not improve the quality of all the citizens in our county. Elected officials and health administrators in our county were greatly behind the curve in recognizing the harm of opioid use. Although parents came to Board of Supervisors meetings for at least 2 years back in the early 2000s. Opioids back then, it was oxycodone, were too long considered to be a no-harm miracle pain drug. Now, the opioid creating havoc is fentanyl. Parents are very concerned that the county is not recognizing the harm of the highly concentrated THC marijuana products made by and sold at marijuana businesses at a time when the county recognizes the increase in mental health needs, with very costly solutions being considered. This is a good time for the county to hit the pause button in spending any more money or staff time on this idea. Only pot profiteers have benefited from marijuana businesses in our county. Youth, families, teachers, law enforcement have not. Thank you for hearing my concerns this morning.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Chair Vargas and honorable supervisors, my name is Anthony Avalos. I'm the co-founder of the Council of Equity Advocacy San Diego. First, I want to say thank you to Andrew Strong and Brandon for the impossible work that they're doing right now and trying to rectify past harms. That is an uphill battle, and we need to talk about some ways that we can move forward in this battle. First, the funding, which right now sits at about $350,000, is paltry, insulting. It doesn't come close to matching the hundreds of millions of dollars spent on enforcement over the decades. Our organization spoke with the state. The state made it clear. Local municipalities must fund their own programs. Funding from the state will not be sufficient to raise up or maintain a social equity program. We need funding commitment that reflects a true attempt to rectify damages of the past. We don't want token gestures, and we need San Diego to not fall short of its moral and civic duty here. The grant amount per individual would cover about 1.4% of the total cost to own and operate a cannabis business. That's laughably inadequate. This oversight sets up our community for failure and leaves the vulnerable open to predatory practices that we've witnessed in other places. Again, substantial funding can ensure that entrepreneurs are set up for success and not dependency. Additionally, the failure to adequately recognize and address specific harms done to our indigenous communities and the compounded impact on family of community members disproportionately targeted, it's a glaring omission. San Diego must expand its criteria to inclusively address the historical and ongoing injustices that we've endured. We're at a pivotal moment. The CEA calls on the board.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
This is Peggy Walker. I oppose this and find that the staff report paints an appallingly biased picture that inexcusably lacks due diligence in addressing serious concerns. There's nothing questioning success impediments, lack state regulatory issues that impact safety, lack testing standards, contaminants, inadequate product labeling or warning issues, THC potency problems, illicit Mexican and Chinese industry influence, the uncontrollable black market, and reportedly a collapsing legal market. There's no mention of the state's $700 million plus tax revenue loss due to defaults of small business owners just like those you propose to support here. Nothing about mounting addiction, psychosis, schizophrenia, violence, suicide, child poisoning, homelessness rooted in pot use, DUIs, or misleading hype, medical falsehoods that interfere with real medical treatment. These problems attest to the harms of letting loose on the public a non-FDA-approved psychoactive drug. Why are they completely ignored when they have profound public impact? Your disregard for these reflects why a former U.S. Drug Control Policy Director concluded that a decade in, legalizing weed has been a disaster underscored by gross irresponsibility in legalizing without FDA approval or full understanding of health and social consequences. San Francisco and Oregon recognize the disaster and are curbing back. Why should we expand? Catering to the pot industry at everyone else's expense is not equitable.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Good morning, Board. My name is Kathleen Lippett. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. As a public health researcher, I oppose this policy as it will contribute further to every public health problem that the county deals with, and it will be worsened. Equity is neither synonymous with nor superior to equality. Equality values our differences equally. Equal outcomes is the goal of equity, which is neither achievable nor sustainable. Outcomes are mediated by an infinite array of individual characteristics, and the goal of equality needs no bureaucracies, no DEI staff, consultants, or grants, or extra funding, because everyone is treated equally. In contrast, an equity lens subjects taxpayers to an escalating and unsustainable tax burden. Equity programs have failed wherever they have been adopted, led to a cascade of harmful consequences, to unequal, unjust, divisive, and racist policies. It opens the door for elites and electeds to arbitrarily choose which group of the day they favor. It contravenes the 14th Amendment rights to equal protection and due process for all citizens. This program was driven by political ideology and industry influence, not by the authentic community members you swore to serve. The sustainability impact statement goals contradict the evidence of marijuana industry harms. Your community engagement ignores unincorporated community residents and prioritizes marijuana industry stakeholders. Asserting this problem can transition to a green economy reflects an utter ignorance of the environmentally destructive record of the marijuana industry, which has wantonly killed, poisoned, contaminated, polluted, destroyed wildlife, soil, water, rivers, and streams with pesticides, insecticides, herbicides, and dangerous pollutants.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Hello, my name is Chad LaChance, previously of Mother's Alternative Healing Cooperative Incorporated, license number MMJ0001. We were the first licensed medical marijuana dispensary in the county of San Diego back in 2011. During our time, we were operating during the height of federal involvement in the county of San Diego, and we were directly affected by the impact of the war on drugs. We were given a blanket letter that was sent out to all dispensaries, business or the property owners at the time, saying that you're renting to an illegal operation, evict your tenant, or we will take your building. We went through the eviction process and subsequent bankruptcy proceedings to try and keep our doors open. We were operating by the letter of the law, and we were forced to shut our doors. This was a small family business. We invested over $750,000 into our business at the time and lost everything. My main concern is your eligibility for the tiers. Includes incarcerations, arrests, and convictions, but not those who were evicted as local licensed businesses. As we were those negatively impacted by the federal war on drugs, I would suggest that you change the wording of the eligibility tiers to include evictions of locally licensed businesses as a way to make up for the negative impact at the time, which happened in your county. I've been doing my best to lend insight through all the public outreach meetings and to help guide this program as it proceeds, and I would love to be able to have the chance to reclaim my place in the industry. I've been able to develop multiple locations throughout the state of California afterwards through other organizations that have yet.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Paul LeBold, a lot of the research seems to be very scholarly, but it seems to be based on outdated and limited data. Sounds like Sendag may be at it again. The report says end cannabis criminalization and open opportunity for those directly impacted by expanding expungement efforts. I'm reminded of Frisco or LA's struggles with crime. Please don't let it happen here. With a depleted police force and an invasion of immigrants, we can ill afford to decriminalize activities which we know are harmful to society at large. The two tiers, it seems that you are pitting people against each other based on when they were arrested or convicted, and maybe a bit of income inequality too. And I don't know how someone could be deported or convicted for arrests in San Diego County crime, by the way. The Matrix, you want to oppose a license ceiling for cannabis storefront retailers only, but not impose a license ceiling for all other cannabis business types, manufacturing, distribution, delivery, cultivation, or testing. This will result in a bottleneck, a glut of services and supplies with nowhere to go. Bad for business. And then the Matrix says the board has the discretion to change all these things, so to me it's pretty meaningless. Finally, the resolution says vacancies that is on the cannabis board you're creating shall be filled by the applicable nominating or appointing authorities specified in Section 2. There is no Section 2.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Good morning. My name is Andrea St. Julian, and I am co-chair of San Diegans for Justice. I thank the county for moving forward with the Cannabis Social Equity Program. This program is vitally important to those individuals, families, and communities that were most negatively impacted by the war on cannabis. I do have real concerns about many aspects of the program, but because I only have 2 minutes, I will limit my comments to the most important issue. The social equity program is so underfunded, it can accomplish nothing. As part of my work with Cannabis Social Equity, I have met with the state's Cannabis Social Equity Office, and there was one clear message that that office wanted me to bring back to our local jurisdictions, and that is that the state funding of social equity will decrease and will continue to decrease, and the funding of cannabis social equity programs must be done by the local jurisdictions. In other words, the county can't simply assume that it will be getting funding from the state, because that funding will not be forthcoming. In order to appropriately fund this program, a percentage of revenue from cannabis taxes must be specifically allocated to the Cannabis Social Equity Program. Community members supportive of Cannabis Social Equity urge this board to place on the ballot a measure allocating a percentage of cannabis taxes specifically to the Cannabis Social Equity Program. Because county cannabis taxes have already been approved by voters, a new measure merely allocating those taxes can be passed with a 50% plus one vote, making the success of the ballot measure much more likely. For decades, this county criminalized.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Good morning, Supervisors. My name is Becky Rapp. I'm a parent and a public health educator here to strongly oppose this item and hope to bring to your attention some of the things that are of significant harm that marijuana poses to a community. States, counties, and cities across the country are recognizing the detrimental effects. Our county is facing a crisis, and we truly need all hands on deck. The marijuana marketplace has no state oversight or minor decoy operations and spends no money on the enforcement of laws. These responsibilities fall completely on our county, requiring precious funds so badly needed in other areas. Recently, I shared with you that the County of San Francisco has implemented a pot shop moratorium, banning the permits of all pot shops moving forward. Today, I'd like to share with you a recent article out of Virginia titled, "Virginia Governor Vetoes Marijuana Market Bill." According to the article, Governor Glenn Youngkin stated the proposed legalization of retail marijuana in the Commonwealth endangers citizens' health and safety. His explanation summarizes the negative consequences faced by other states that have permitted pot shops. States following this path have seen adverse effects on children's and adolescents' health and safety, increased gang activity and violent crime, significant deterioration in mental health, decreased road safety, and significant costs associated with retail marijuana that far exceeds tax revenue. I bring to your attention because counties like ours are taking the time now to reevaluate and reassess marijuana businesses' impacts. I would urge you to take a look at the recent data collected in our county, the firsthand experiences of those on the front lines, including law enforcement and emergency room doctors, particularly those who work at Rady Children's Hospital and Scripps.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
The war on drugs was a concerted, militarized campaign led by the U.S. government, including the County of San Diego.
Can you please state your name?
Racial profiling, aggressive, Alexandra Osisioma.
Thank you.
Racial profiling, aggressive policing and prosecution, long mandatory prison sentences, and a host of collateral consequences have wrought devastation in the lives of millions of people in the United States and beyond. While I strongly support the work to develop cannabis social equity in San Diego, are we to believe that job placement and assistance and continuing education are adequate to address these harms? Again, my name is Alexandra Osisioma, and I'm part of the Council of Equity Advocacy San Diego. I'm here today for two reasons. First, I want to commend the efforts of the OERJ to advocate for all survivors of this state-sanctioned violence. Second, I want to state that more bold action is needed and required. Survivors of the war on drugs deserve and require a clear plan for the Cannabis Social Equity Beneficiaries Program that extends far beyond a rehashing of existing programs like job placement and assistance and continuing education. Sincerely, thank you to the OERJ. From the beginning, you have been receptive supporting individuals harmed by the war on drugs. We saw you reaching out to behavioral health services, going to behavioral health advisory meetings, and advocating for the unique needs of war on drug survivors. Despite this vision and despite these efforts, the CAC, we still believe that the current program is lacking. We're asking the county to robustly fund and develop a comprehensive social equity beneficiary program rather than repackage existing programs. Survivors deserve and require standalone suite of services that address their unique needs. Let's learn from the shortcomings of other municipalities and showcase to the nation and the world that San Diego is committed.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. This is Ann Riddle here. Thank you for this opportunity to share some thoughts regarding the social equity program criteria that we're looking at today. I think it's important to remind ourselves that when this came forward to us in January of 2021, it did not come from any of the county's planning groups. It came from Board of Supervisor Fletcher. There were concerns at the time that he had in past times had on his staff many people involved in the marijuana business world, and that there was some sort of pay-to-play going on. Well, he's gone, so we can't answer that question. But the fact remains that still no county planning group has asked for or supports this idea. As I was participating in the listening session, in response to my own county planning group, one of the things that kept coming up was the comment that, was this an example of soft racism of low expectations? Did we really want to help people in lower social economic populations, maybe who have been harmed by incarceration? Can't we offer a whole lot more than a pot shop as some sort of way to assist them? And that's why you will note in the presentation that one of the comments that was made regarding funding is to use it for non-cannabis small businesses, because our county planning groups wanted something else to improve our rural backcountry and the retail settings that are available to them. The other concern I have is I listened to the appeals that you heard yesterday about people affected by the flood. This is not very much money, and it's coming from our existing general purpose fund for this proposal, the social equity program criteria. Let's put a pause on it. Spend our money.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
A true socialist, racist equity, taxes on a plant to rectify injustices caused by the war on drugs. Bring back another addiction and tax all the profit out of it. That'll help. Or at least somehow help criminals like Cannabis Cardenas or Jose Cannabis to funnel money to political campaigns. Instead of the 1980s with everyone's doors getting busted through without a warrant, now government just demands that anyone with a plant pay them a tribute in order to make a profit. It's called extortion. And there's going to be extra benefits, perks, bribes for those who meet the extra special checked boxes, people who knowingly committed crimes. What a fine group to prop up with the meaningless word equity. Ironically, under these criteria, I think Jesus Cannabis Cardenas might qualify to again build his political cannabis money funnel operation. Even the business mentioned in the equity statement, women's work consulting, can't even recognize women or men. They have to X out the letter E. The report's even steeped in lies, as evidenced by this line, quote, "In a country built on the enslavement and genocide of black and indigenous, it is revolutionary to plan for reparations and land rematriation," end quote. They are clearly communists with the goal of racist taxes and land theft. Actually, they're the colonialists. Their entire report oozes un-American racism. This item even says that the unincorporated areas were not properly asked their opinions on any of this program. Business as usual. Kathleen Lippett's been on a roll, and she said back in March, quote, "The proposed beneficiaries of these equity policies are not inclusive at all. Equity policies are inherently exclusionary, inequitable, and racist. It's not liberal to trample the rights of some to accommodate others. Tyranny by the minority is no better than tyranny by the majority. Equity is a benevolent-sounding label based on immutable characteristics of the amount of melanin in your skin," end quote. Enough said. Racism, go.
Thank you. And Chairwoman Vargas, that concludes public comment on this item. The Chairwoman has asked me to read her speaking comments on this item. They're coming up on the screen here. I'll read them on the screen. I would like to thank the Office of Equity and Racial Justice for all of their work in partnership with stakeholders. When we first introduced this work back in 2021, we did it intending to create measures that would provide economic access and equity in the cannabis industry. Since then, OERJ has led the efforts in an inclusive manner in partnership with county departments and the community to provide the framework before us. I'm proud that this program will prioritize equity, access, and business opportunities to help rectify the injustices against people of color caused by the many years of failed policies like the war on drugs. These policies have increased the disparity gap and the many factors that negatively impact the health and well-being of people of color and underinvested communities who have already experienced structural challenges, including discrimination. As stated in the board letter, the equity assessment proposed is a detailed plan for advancing racial equity, continuing community engagement in a manner that is both empowering and healing, and most importantly, ensuring county accountability to the most harmed communities in the development and implementation of the social equity cannabis program. With that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 4 recommendations as proposed, including the staff recommendations in attachment B for recommendation 3 of the board letter. Thank you. Now turn it over to Supervisor Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My office got a lot of calls, and I just want to remind people, we're talking about the unincorporated areas of our county only. We're not talking about any of the cities. These are all just the unincorporated. And 4 of the 5 current legal distributors, cannabis distributors, are in my district. And many of these folks went through a very trying time. One of the businesses, 3 of them are in Ramona, one's in unincorporated El Cajon. One of the businesses was sold a bill of goods. They invested their life savings, everything into it, and then the Board of Supervisors had a change of heart in the direction, and they got caught with an incredible amount of debt. They have eked it out and tried to stay open, but like we heard from one of the callers who called in, I believe that we need to make sure that we have a level playing field, and that we're not penalizing early adopters and all the stuff they went through. Remember, the federal government doesn't allow them to have banks. They have to pay for security. They have to do so all those things necessary to protect the community. When we first started on this, and I want to thank my colleagues again for voting for $2.5 million for law enforcement to shut down over 100 illegal pawn shops. Lakeside, unincorporated El Cajon, some of Ramona, and lots in Spring Valley had illegal pawn shops. There was no security there. One of them was located next to an elementary school. They had sign spinners. It was completely out of control, and all that had been reined in. But I think as we move forward, have we put, I have a few questions, and I'm not sure. I don't know if, Sheriff, you want to direct it to staff or whoever, but did we take in consideration of, in our equity program, all the hardship that the current businesses went through to make sure it's a level playing field?
And I will take a crack at that question, but it might be a question for Planning and Development Services, who are here as well, if they have anything to chime in on. But for the social equity program in particular is only for new businesses and new potential social equity applicants and entrepreneurs and beneficiaries. So we did work with the existing operators initially to see how they could support the program and see if they wanted to invest in the work that we were doing. So we have been working with them over the past few years in that space, but we haven't been necessarily looking at the harms that were done to them, like one of the callers spoke to.
Well, the concern I have is if a business opens up on either side of them and we're financially helping them, it'd be at their detriment, and I want to make sure that we're not advantaging one by stepping on another. I'm fully supportive of the equity program, but it should not be at the expense of people that were early adapters who suffered. The next thing on the socially equitable part, I had added some amendments when we first passed this, and I voted for it. And one of them was that nobody with a weapons conviction would be allowed through the equity program to get licensing. I didn't see it in the program, and I wanted to know how we were doing that. That was one of the solid amendments, and I actually had my team pull it. So if anybody wants to see how they voted in the past, you know, on one hand, we're saying we want to increase penalties on people that have ghost guns, but if you had a gun and you got a weapons charge in conviction, but we're going to ignore that, you know, I want these businesses to succeed, but the majority of the cannabis is in my district right now. And my residents deserve the same safety that residents of the city of San Diego or the residents of La Mesa or Vista or any place else. So I just want to know, where does that stand?
Well, we don't do background checks on folks with to give business licenses within the county, but what is the standard process is the state automatically has a list of disqualified felonies for cannabis owners. So, and the list is felony-related drug charges, violent and serious felonies, felonies involving embezzlement, you know, being sanctioned by local licensing and other authorities.
My concern on that is we have wobblers. Things that can be charged as a felony or charged as a misdemeanor. A DA may lower the charge for a guilty plea so they don't have to go to court. That still puts somebody who had a gun illegally in their possession while dealing drugs or whatever else they were doing. And so I don't want people who used weapons and were convicted of having weapons charges being released, because the next thing is my colleagues are going to want to increase gun laws on law-abiding citizens who did nothing wrong, and yet we're rewarding people who've been found guilty of a criminal act.
We'll confirm that with the state, and we'll also work with county council to make sure we add something to that effect.
And then the other part of the socially equity, if I live in LA or Modesto or Fresno, and I come here and I want to open up, do I qualify for it? Because, see, I didn't harm anybody up there, and I want the benefit, and I want to make right those who live in San Diego County. Is it limited to San Diego County residents?
It's not, and unfortunately, we tried hard to do that, and unfortunately, that violates Interstate Commerce Clause. We can't use zip codes. We can't restrict it to a specific region. There are lawsuits up and down the state on that. But you have to have a conviction. Have to have conviction or arrested within San Diego County. But we can't just restrict it to the region because it doesn't violate those laws.
So if the person was here and then moved away, now they want to move back, I don't have an issue with that as long as they were here. The issue I have is, we look at giving priority for county work based on different factors. We give priority on all sorts of things in state law and in county ordinances. I just want to make sure that we're prioritizing people that are here. I mean, just yesterday we all voted to look at ways to prioritize local businesses getting awards of contracts here with the county. When we think in terms of the 9-member board that's going to oversee this, San Diegans oversee San Diego. La Mesans oversee La Mesa. I would ask that we add an element in there that a percent had to come from the unincorporated region. It's not fair that somebody living in La Jolla or La Mesa or Vista is on a board telling people who live in Ramona how to eat the cabbage. People who live in the unincorporated, who are most impacted, should have a bigger say. Now, some people say, well, they're more expertise. That board can certainly reach out to any expert in the world and have them come in and present to them. But the notion that we're going to allow people who don't live in the community dictate to the community how to eat the cabbage, I think is wrong. I think that there should be an element in there that we have 600,000 people that live in the unincorporated. I'm sure that we all represent somebody who would be great on that board of that 600,000, that we don't have to go to somebody else. So I'd like, moving forward, that we address this. Those are, and the final item for me is when we passed it, we talked about community benefits and as part of the equity plan. Where is the community benefit? I didn't see it. What's the status of the community benefit? Because we are impacting those neighborhoods. And let me tell you, of the 5 current operators, they went through the planning group, they went through the usual process, they had to adhere to the community, and we're not having them go through that process anymore. We're creating a fast track for them. So what is the community benefit equity that the communities are going to receive?
And thank you for that question, Supervisor. And we're not creating a fast track for them. We're actually just giving them opportunity to stand up their business before the other more larger entities might come in. And we're not creating a different process. They'll have to go through the same permanent process that those dispensaries have gone through. But as far as the community benefit agreement that you're speaking to, we're working very closely with Planning and Development Services on that, and they're developing a couple of options to present to the board at the next update of the ordinance. So that's going to be coming, I believe, in early next year.
So if I may, you probably have already looked at Sacramento. Sacramento's, they take 1% of the gross. It's been of great benefit to the community. And I wanted, if you haven't, I'm sure you're way ahead of me, but in our small research, we found plenty of programs that have been beneficial to the community.
And that is definitely a model that we looked at really quickly after you talked to us about what your community wanted. And one
you just outed me in front of everybody.
But there's actually a lawsuit on that specific program right now because we can't apply a special tax, and some folks may consider that a special tax. So we've been looking at the different options for that and trying to be very careful about what we can do.
Well, I appreciate. Thank you very much for all your. By the way, your team has worked so hard. You've been very easy to deal with, and I appreciate all the outreach that you all have done. I made promises to my communities. There's still some holes in this. I'm not comfortable voting yes until some of the holes are filled. The weapons conviction aspect is a real problem for my district, and the fact that on the 9-member group has not been defined as to the requirements for those, but yet we know that many of the appointments we make have requirements that the person has to live in an area, like we have Park. I believe that in the Spring Valley area, there's a park district that you have to live in that park district, and in order to be on that committee. And I don't see any of that in this. And at this time, I can't support something that doesn't support our unincorporated communities. And if it changes, I voted for it before, and I'd vote for it again, but it has to protect my unincorporated residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, Supervisor Montgomery Stepp.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the presentation and all the work that has gone into this. We're sort of on parallel tracks, even though I wasn't here sitting in the seat, so appreciate all of the work. Just confirming that state law does not allow someone who has a weapon charge to own a license, to have a license. Is that accurate?
I believe so, but we will confirm that.
Okay.
We will confirm that.
There's okay. Just if we could get that as soon as possible, that'd be awesome. You also had letters of support from Mr. Strong. You indicated you were working with current owners in unincorporated areas that support the program. Is that accurate?
Yeah, initially we were working very closely with the initial 5 dispensaries. Some of them are turned over since we've moved forward with a lot of the programming, but they have been in support. They've always wanted to support and find ways to help out the social equity program, and so we very much appreciate it.
So some are in support now, but some are not. Or all of them aren't in support?
Some of them have turned over to some we haven't checked in with in a while, so it would be worth us reaching out for sure to find out what the support level is.
Okay, yeah, appreciate that you not wanting to misrepresent, but understanding that you have engaged and had those conversations and generally supportive, people are supportive of social equity. I just want to make a difference and a distinction. And this is also coming from a person who, myself, who have parents who are business owners, and engaging in small business in our region is just hard in general. It's very hard. And so want to certainly acknowledge those who had the capability and the ability, and maybe we're not in jail or prison when we, as a state, made this a legal proposition, right? That it is hard to do business in our region. And this industry, as well as others, there is certainly a business risk that we all understand and appreciate with any business. For me, this is different. Why? Because for decades upon decades, there have been hundreds and thousands of people, specifically people of color, that have spent time in jail and or prison for possession of cannabis and or marijuana that is now legal to sell. So the very thing that took folks away from their families and that was not legal at the time they were doing it is now legal. That's completely different from going back, in my mind, in my opinion, it's completely different from dealing with any government entity and going back and forth and having difficulties in propping up a business. That, in my mind, there's a different situation. Not discounting the entrepreneurial spirit, those who did go forth and start their businesses, but literally not everyone had that opportunity, literally. Because there were people in jail and prison for the very reason that others were able to set up legal cannabis shops at the same time. So we could have a split screen of that. So this is, in my mind, very important. It is showing that the county is acknowledging and recognizing that. Now, if the state wants to go back and make cannabis illegal again, then that's up to the state. But it's not. It's legal. And the federal government is also changing its categorization of cannabis as we speak. So that is going to open up additional opportunities for folks who are now own and have a license for cannabis business and that are pursuing a license. And that will change the landscape as far as opportunity quite a bit. So for those reasons, the impact of the war on drugs, it had negatively impacted some communities more than others. We can go through, the impacts of racial profiling. It is a thing. We do have data. It's real. And so this is a way to start rectifying those wrongs. And we're all entitled to our own opinion about it. But, this is factual. And I appreciate the county moving forward in actually standing up a program that acknowledges those wrongs, acknowledges that history, and moving forward tries to make it right. And I'm sure we'll be monitoring this as we move forward to see how it's working for people and whether or not we need to change anything. In addition to that, we certainly, small businesses, generally speaking, who need help, who need assistance, who we have wronged before, we also need to take a look at that. But social equity, this is the purpose of the program. It is to rectify a wrong, and it is acknowledging our history. And with that, I will support this item. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Through the chair, Supervisor Desmond.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it. I voted against this when it was originally presented in 2020, and I still don't support the program. I think this is quite a reach for social equity vision, and I do think it's counterproductive. The idea that we're helping those with past offenses who are in the low-income category by making it easier to get involved in the legal cannabis industry, I think, is misguided. And I think the society and the use of cannabis in our society still negatively hurts those who are low income. And to continue on with that effort, to just people who have many opportunities or affluent, marijuana is like a martini or something like that. They're able to shrug it off and get off because they got many more opportunities. Whereas people who are potentially lower income and don't have as many opportunities in life, unfortunately cope with those fewer opportunities, and it leads by using cannabis, and it leads to a pathway of destruction. So I understand this is an opportunity to get into the illegal cannabis industry, but I just think cannabis as a whole for our society is not healthy or helpful. It's brain numbing, and we should be enhancing people through education, life skills, and things like that instead of more marijuana. So, and I understand, and I can appreciate my Supervisor Montgomery Stepp's compassion on many people were put in jail and potentially just harming themselves and not anybody else. And that's true. We should try to stop that or not have that happen again. But the law was the law when it happened. And now you get to jump ahead of the line. You know, it sends a message of, well, you can go ahead and break the law now. It's okay because you're going to get social equity later. I just don't think that's how we want to go as a society. I think the less cannabis that we have in society, the better. So I'm going to be a no vote, and that's my opinion. Thank you.
Through the chair, Vice Chair Lawson-Remer.
Hi, thank you. First of all, thank you to the team. I know how hard you have all been working in consulting and engaging and more working. So it's, and it really shows in the effort. And I'm going to be supporting this today. I just wanted to make some comments. I think, first of all, I wanted to commend my colleague, Supervisor Anderson, for being an extremely effective advocate for his district. I don't agree with his perspective and point of view, but I think he is a very effective advocate for his constituents. So I appreciate that. I do think it's important to kind of zoom back and acknowledge that this is called the Social Equity Program, not the Social Equality Program. And there's a reason for that. It's because at the core, there's a significant difference between equity and equality. And it's the acknowledgement that different people begin from different starting points. And the kind of core premise of this social equity program is an acknowledgement that for over a generation, our war on drugs targeted specific individuals disproportionately who ended up in jail, sometimes with homes broken, suffering disproportionate consequences of now of a war on, quote, war on drugs on something that is now legal, and not just legal in California, that we're now moving towards reducing the classification of marijuana at the federal level. And that's not right. That's wrong. It's not fair and it's wrong. And we also know, if we kind of look back to the 30s and 40s when marijuana was beginning to be criminalized, that there's a pretty significant legislative record that it was moving towards criminalization in large part to target our African American population in the South. And like, you can't ignore that that's what has happened. That is the history of our country, and that is the history of the war on drugs, and that is the history of the criminalization and the prosecution of marijuana in our country. And that's what this is about. It's about how do we can't fix the wrongs that have been historically inflicted. You can't fix it. It's done. And there's people whose lives were broken. But we can at least as a society say, hey, for those who are alive and trying to move into a profitable legal business, let's acknowledge the injustices and do our part to create an equitable playing field for people who've been disproportionately targeted. And that's what, to me, this is about, and it's not. I think we have to uplift that. And I just want to comment for a moment on Supervisor Anderson's comments about the gun convictions. I have spent countless hours here and in the last number of years as your county supervisor advocating fiercely to do more to rein in the terror being inflicted on our communities by guns and gun violence, and that we have to do more. We're obligated to do more. The legislation I've brought forward on tackling the ghost gun issue has been targeted on those that are profiteering from the violence in our communities, the distributors, those that are looking to make money off the deaths and destructions being sowed in our communities, not targeting individuals who might have gotten caught up in some kind of activities and have served their time and went through whatever kind of criminal processes they've gone through and have come out the other side. That's not what we're looking at when we're talking about tackling gun violence. We're not talking about targeting individuals. We're talking about targeting the big distributors, the gun manufacturers who are making money in our communities off of death. So I wanted to just be very clear that those are extremely different. I think it's very, very important that if we're moving forward with a social equity program, that we acknowledge that people may have committed a crime in the past and they've potentially served their time, and we are not trying to keep people trapped in a cycle of violence and jail and a revolving door in our criminal system because they don't have any business opportunities to get back on their feet. The last thing we want to do is to say, if you've served your time now, you can't get a job. You can't get a house. You can't put a roof over your head. You're just stuck. You're homeless. No, we want to create opportunities and pathways for people to be law-abiding citizens, to contribute to our society. And I think it's really important we don't slam that door in people's faces that are doing their utmost to get back on their feet. So those are the two comments I had to make. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we have a motion by Chairwoman Vargas, seconded by Supervisor Montgomery Steppe. Please vote. Chairwoman Vargas, that motion passes with Supervisor Anderson and Supervisor Desmond voting no, all other supervisors being present and voting aye. The board will now take a recess until 1:30 this afternoon. Board is in recess until 1:30 p.m.